and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the book of Judges. We're currently reading, we're probably going to go all the way to um, Ezra, but for now, let's read the book of Judges. So, Judah's leadership against Canaanites. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites in after the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired to the Lord, "Who will be the first to fight for us against the Canaanites?" The Lord answered, "Judah is to go there." Okay, let's see. Judah is to go there. I have handed the land over to him. Judah said to his brother Simon, "Come with me to my allotted territory, and let us fight against the Canaanites. I will also go with you to your allotted territory." So Simon went with him. When Judah attacked, the Lord handed the Canaanites and Perizzites over to them. They struck down the 10,000 men in Bezek. They found Adoni Bezek in Bezek found against them, and struck down the Canaanites and Perizzites. When Adoni Bezek fled, they pursued him, caught him, and cut off his thumbs and big toes. Adoni Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to pick the scraps under my table. The God has repaired me for what I have done. They brought him to Jerusalem, and he died. The men of Judah fought against Jerusalem, captured it, put it to the sword, and set the city on fire. After which the men of Judah marched down to fight against the Canaanites, who were living in the hill country, the Negev, and the Judah foothills. Judah also marched against the Canaanites, who were living in Hebron. Hebron was formerly named Kiriath Arba. They struck down Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmon. From there, they marched against the residents of David, who was formerly named Kiriath Sefer. Caleb said, "Whoever takes the captures Kiriath Sefer, I will give my daughter Ashkan to him as a wife." So Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, captured it, and Caleb gave his daughter Ashton to him as his wife. When she arrived, he persuaded Othniel to ask her father for a field. As she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What do you want?" She answered him, "Give me a blessing, since you have given me land in the Negev. Give me springs also." So Caleb gave her both the upper and lower springs. The descendants of the Kenites, Moses' father-in-law, got them from the city of palms in the wilderness of Judah, which was in the Negev and Arad. They went to live among the people. Judah went with his brother Simon, struck the Canaanites who were living in Zipporah. They completely destroyed the town. So they named town Homa. Judah captured Gaza and its territory, Ascalon and its territory, and Ekron and its territory. The Lord was with Judah and enabled them to take possession of the hill country, but they could not drive out the people who were living in the valley, because those people had iron chariots. Judah gave Zebulun and Caleb, just as Moses had promised. That Caleb drove out the 3 sons of Anak who lived Benjamin's failure. At the time, the Benjamin did not drive out the in Jerusalem. The Jebusites have lived among the Benjamins in Jerusalem to this day. Success with the house of Joseph. The house of Joseph also attacked Bethlehem. The Lord was with them. They sent spies to Bethel. The town was formerly named Luz. The spies saw a man coming out of the town and said to him, "Please show us how to get into town, and he will show your kindness." When he showed them the way into the town, they put the town to the sword, but released the man and his entire family. Then the man went to the land of Hinites, built a town, and named it Luz. This is its name still today. Failure of the other tribes. At the time, Manasseh failed to take possession of Beth and Shem and Tanah and their surrounding villages. Megiddo and their surrounding villages and Canaanites were determined to stay in the land. When Israel became stronger, they made the Canaanites serve forced slavery, but they never drove them out of it completely. At the time, Ephraim failed to drive out the Canaanites who were living in Gezer. The Canaanites have lived among them in Gezer. Zebulun failed to drive out the residents of Kitron or the residents of Nahol. So the Canaanites. So the Canaanites have lived among them in Gezer. Zebulun failed to drive out the residents of Kitron and the residents of Nahol. So the Canaanites lived among them and served as forced labor. Asher failed to drive out the residents of Akum and Sidon. Eleanor, Jesus, the Israelites lived among the Canaanites who were living in the land because they failed to drive them out. They did not drive out the residents of the Amorites forced the Danites into the hill country and did not allow them to go down to the valley. The Amorites were determined to stay in when the house of Joseph got the upper hand, the Amorites were made for service for slavery. The territory of the Amorites extended from the Scorpions ascent, that is, from Selah upward. Pattern of the sin and judgment. The angel of the Lord went up to Gilad of Tubal-Shim and said, "I brought you out of Egypt and led you into the land I had promised your father. I will never break my covenant with you. You are not to make a covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You are to tear down their altars, but you have not obeyed me. What is this you have done? Therefore I now say, I will not drive out these people before you. They will be thorns in your sides, and their gods will be trap for you." When the angel of the Lord had spoken to these words, all the Israelites, the people who spoke loudly, so they named that place Bokim and offered sacrifices there to the Lord. Joshua said, previously when Joshua had sent the people away, the Israelites had gone to take possession of the land, each of his own inheritance. The people worshipped the Lord throughout Joshua's lifetime, and during the lifetime of the elders who outlived Joshua, they had seen all the Lord's great works, and they had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, but they buried him in the territory of the inheritance, here in the hill country north of Mount Gash. The whole generation was gathered in the essence of after the generation rose up who did not know the Lord of the works he had done for Israel. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They worshipped the Baals and abandoned the Lord of their fathers who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed their gods from the surrounding peoples and bowed them down. They angered the Lord, for they abandoned him and worshipped Baal and Ashtoreth. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and they handed them over to the Magites, who raided them, who sold them to the enemies around them, and they could no longer resist their enemies. Whenever the Israelites went out, the Lord was against them and brought them disaster on them, just as he had promised and sworn to them. So they suffered greatly. The Lord raised up judges who saved them from the power of their martyrs, but they did not listen to their judges. Instead, Instead, they positioned themselves with their other gods, bowing down to them. They clearly turned from the way of their fathers, who had walked in obedience to the Lord's commands. They did not do as their fathers did. Whenever the Lord rose up a judge from the Israelites, the Lord was with him, and they saved the people from the power of their enemies. While the judge was still alive, the Lord was moved to pity whenever they groaned because of those who were oppressed and oppressing and afflicting them. Whenever the judge died, the Israelites would act even more corruptly than their fathers, following other gods to serve them and bowing worship to them. They did not turn from their evil practices or their obstinate ways. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he declared, because this nation has violated my covenant that I made with their fathers and disobeyed me. Because this nation has violated my covenant and that I have made with their fathers and disobeyed me, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died. I did this to test Israel, to see whether or not they would keep the Lord's way by walking in it, as their fathers had. The Lord left these nations and did not drive them out immediately. He did not hand them over to Joshua. The Lord tests Israel. These are the nations the Lord left in order to test the men of Israel who had experienced none of the wars in Canaan. This was to teach the future generations of the Israelites how to fight in battle, especially those who had not fought before. These nations included the 5 rulers of the Philistines and the Canaanites and the Sidonians and the Hivites who lived in the Lebanese mountains and Mount Balaam. As far as the entrance of Hamat, the Lord left them to test Israel, to determine if they would keep the Lord's commands he had given their fathers through Moses. But they settled among the Canaanites, Hittites, and Jebusites. The Israelites took their daughters as wives, and for themselves they gave their own daughters to their sons and worshipped their gods. Joined forces with him, he attacked and defeated Israel and took possession of the city. The Israelites served King Eglon of Moab 18 years. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he raised up and the son of Gera had left-handed Benjamin as a deliverer for them. The Israelites sent him with the tribe of King Eglon of Moab. Ehud made himself a double-edged sword. What the hell? Ehud made himself a double-edged sword, 18 inches long. He strapped it to his right thigh under his clothes and brought the tribute to King Eglon, who was an extremely fat man. When Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he dismissed the people who had carried it at the carved images of God. He returned and said, King Eglon, I have a secret message for you. The king sat silent, and all his attendants left him. Then Ezra approached them while he was sitting alone in his upstairs room where it was cool. It was, I have a message from God to you. And the king stood up from his throne Zeus reached with his left hand, took the sword from his right eye, then plunged it into Eglon's belly. Then even the handle went out after the blade. Eglon's fat closed in over it, and it did not withdraw the sword from his belly, and the waist came out. Zeus escaped by the way of the porch, closing and locking the doors of the upstairs room behind him. Exuda was gone, and Eglon's servant came in. They looked and found the doors of the upstairs rooms locked, and thought he was relieving himself. In the cool room, the servants waited until they came embraced and saw that he was still not open the doors in the upstairs room. So they took the key and opened the door, and there was their lord lying dead on the floor. Edward escaped while the servants waited. He passed the Jordan near the carved images and reached Syria. After he arrived, he sounded the ram horns throughout the hill country of Ephraim. The Israelites came down with him from the hill country, and he became their leader. He told them, "Follow me, because the Lord has handed over your enemies and Moabites to you." So they followed him, captured the fords of the Jordan leading to Moab, and did not allow anyone to cross over. At the time, they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, all stout, able-bodied men, who not one of them escaped. Moab became subject to Israel that day, and the land had peace for 80 years. But Shachmar, after Shachmar son of Anath became judge, he was delivered Israel, striking down 600 Philistines with a cattle prod. Deborah and Barak. The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud had died. So the Lord sold them to the king Jabin of Canaan, who resigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sierra, who lived in harsh nations. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because Jabin had 900 iron chariots, and he harshly oppressed them 20 years. Deborah, a prophet, and his wife of Lapidid, was judging Israel at the time. She would sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went up to her to settle disputes. She summoned Barak, son of Abinas, from the kitchen and said to him, "Hasn't the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you to deploy the troops of Mount 10,000 men from the Naphtalites? Then I will and his emphasis on what it is to fight against you." Barak said to her, "I will go. If you will go with me, I will go. But if you will go with me, I will not go." What? If you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. "I will gladly go with you," she said, "but you will receive no honor on the road you are about to take, because the Lord will see Sarah to the movement." So Deborah got up and went with Barak and Kadesh. Barak summoned Zebulun and 10,000 men followed him, and Deborah also went with him. Now Zebulun had moved away from the Canaanites, and the son of Moab. Moses' father Noah pitched his tent beside the oak tree of Zananim, which was near Kadesh. It was reported that Sisera, the Barak son of Abinoam, had gone up Mount Tabor. Sisera summoned all his 900 iron chariots. How many? 900 iron chariots. Oh, that sounds cool. All the troops who were with him from Horosheth of the nations of the Wadi Kishon. And Deborah said to Barak, "Go, this is the day the Lord has handed Sierra over to you. Has the Lord gone before you?" So Barak came down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. The Lord threw Sierra, all his chariots, and all his army into a panic before the Barak assault. Sierra left his chariot and fled unfed. Barak pursued the chariots and the army as far as the nations, and the whole army of Sisera fell by the sword. Not by a single man was left. Meanwhile, Sisera had fled on foot to the tent of Jael and the wife of Jabir the Kenite, because there was peace between King Jabin and Hazor and the family of Heber the Kenite. Jabir went out of the great Sisera and said to him, "Come in, my lord, come in with me. Don't be afraid." So he went into the tent, and she covered him with a blanket. He said to her, "Please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." She opened the container. She opened a container of milk to drink, for I am thirsty. She opened the container of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him again. Then he said to her, "Stand by the entrance to the tent. If a man comes and asks you, is there a man here? Say no." While he was sleeping from exhaustion, Heber's wife, took a tent peg, grabbed a hammer, and went silently to Sarah. She hammered the peg into his temple and drove him to the ground, and he died. Whoa. Damn. When Barak arrived in pursuit of Sisera, Jael went Jael went out to greet him and said to him, "Come and I will show you the man you are looking for." He went in with her, and there was Sisera lying dead in the tent peg through his temple. That day God subdued King Jabin of Canaan before the Israelites. The power of the Israelites continued to increase against King Jabin of Canaan until they destroyed him. Deborah saw. On that day, Deborah and Barak son of Abinadab, the leaders led in Israel. When the people volunteered, "Bless the Lord." Listen, kings, pay attention, princes. I will sing to the Lord. I will sing praise to the Lord God of Israel. Lord, when you come from Seir, when you came from Seir, when you marched from the fields of Edom, the earth trembled, the skies poured rain, and the clouds poured water, the mountains melted before the Lord, even Sinai before the Lord, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, the son of Anak, in the days of Jael, the main roads were deserted, because travelers kept on to the side roads. Villages were deserted. They were deserted in Israel until I, Deborah, rose mother of Israel, and Israel chose new God, a mother in Israel chose new gods. Then there was war in the city gates. Not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 of Israel. My heart is with the leaders of Israel, with the volunteers of the people. Blessed be the Lord, you who ride on white donkeys, who sit on saddle blankets, and who travel to the road. Give praise, let them tell the righteous acts of the Lord, the righteous deeds of these warriors of Israel. Then the voices of the singers at the waiting place, the Lord's, the Lord. Then the Lord's people went down to the city gates. "Awake, awake, Deborah! Awake, awake! Sing a song! Arise, Barak, and take your prisoners, son of Abinadab." Then the survivors came down, and the nobles. The Lord's people came down to me with the warriors, those with their roots in Amalek came from Ephraim. Benjamin came with your people after you. The leaders came down from Machir. And those who carry a marshal's staff came from Zebulun. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah, Issachar with Barak, and they were under his leadership in the valley. There was a great searching of heart among the clans of Reuben, which is why you sit among the sheep pens, listening to the playing of pipes with the flocks. There was great searching of heart among the clans of Reuben. Gilead remained beyond the Jordan. Then, why did you linger at the ships? Asher remained at the seashore and stayed in his harbor. The people of Zebulun defied death. Naphtali also on the heights of the battlefield. Kings came and fought. Then the kings of Canaan fought at Techar by the waters of Megiddo. But they did not plunder the silver. The stars fought from the heavens. The stars fought with Sierra from the path. The river Kishon swept them away. The ancient river, the river Kishon, marched on. My soul and strength. The horses' hooves then hammered. The gallops of galloping on his talons cursed Meroz. Says the angel to the Lord, bitterly curse her inhabitants. So they did not come to help the Lord with warriors. Jill is the most blessed of women, the wife of Heber and Kenite. She is most blessed among tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, she gave him milk. She brought him cream in a majestic bowl. She reached for a tent peg, her right hand, for a workman's hammer. Then she hammered Sisera. She crushed his hand. She shattered and pierced his temple. Huh? She crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. He collapsed. He fell. He lay down between her feet. He collapsed and he fell between her feet. Then he collapsed. There he fell dead. Sarah's mother looked through the window. She peered through the lattice, crying, "Why is this chariot so long in coming? Why so long in Why didn't I hear the hoofbeats of his horsebeats? Her, why is this princess answered her? She even answered herself. Are you not finding and dividing the spoil? A girl or two for each warrior, the spoil of colored garments of Sisera, the spoil of embroidered garments of the two of my neck. Lord, may all of your enemies perish as Sisera did, but may those who love him be like the rising of the sun of his strength in the land of the peace for 40 years. Midian pressed Israel. The Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord handed them over to Midian, and they oppressed Israel. Because of Midian, and the Israelites made hiding places for themselves in the mountains, in the caves, and the strongholds. Wherever the Israelites planted crops, and Midian, Amalekites, and the Cordite came and attacked them, they encamped against them and destroyed the produce of the land, even as far as Gaza. They left nothing for Israel to eat, as well as no sheep, ox, or donkey. For the Midianites came with their cattle and their tents like a great swarm of locusts. They and their camels were without number, and they entered the land to lay waste to it. So Israel became poverty stricken because of Midian, and the Israelites cried out to the Lord. When the Israelites cried out to him because of Midian, the Lord sent a prophet to them. He said to them, "This is what the Lord God of Israel says. I brought you out of Egypt and out of the place of slavery. I rescued you from the power of Egypt and the power of all who oppressed you. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not fear the gods of the Amorites whose land you live in, but you did not obey me." The Lord calls Gideon. The angel of the Lord came and he sat under the oak that was in Ophel, which belonged to Joshua and his son Gideon was thresholding when wheat in the winepress in order to hide from the Midianites. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "The Lord is with you, valiant warriors." Gideon said to him, "Please, my Lord, the Lord is with us. Why has all this happened, and where are all his wonders that our father told us about?" They said, "Hasn't the Lord brought us out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and headed us over to Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, Go in the strength you have and deliver Israel from the grasp of Midian. I am standing you." He said to him, "Please, Lord, how can I deliver Israel? Look, my family is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my father's family. But I will be with you." The Lord said to him, "You will strike Midian down as if it were one man." Then he said to him, "If I have found favor with you, give me a sign that you are speaking with me. Please do not leave this place until I return to you. Let me bring my gift and set it before you." He said, "I will stay until you return." So Gideon went out and prepared a young goat and unleavened bread from a half bushel of flour. He placed the meat of in a basket and both in a pan. He brought them out and offered them to him under the oak. The angel of God said to him, "Take the meat with the unleavened bread, put it in the stone, and pour the broth in it." So he did that. The angel of the Lord extended the tip of the staff that was in the hand and touched the meat and the unleavened bread. Fire came up from the rock. Huh? Fire came up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened bread. Then the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. Then Gideon realized that he was in the he was the angel of the Lord. He said, "Oh no, Lord God, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." The Lord said to him, "Peace to you, don't be afraid, but you will not die." So Gideon built an altar to the Lord where altar there and called it the Lord is peace, and it is to an Ophrah of the Abizarites today. Gideon tears down a Baal altar on the very night of the Lord said to him, "Take your father's young bull and the second bull 7 years old and tear down the altar of Baal that belongs to your father and cut down the Asher poles besides it. Build a well-constructed altar of the Lord your God on top of this mount." On top of this mount. So tear down the altar of the Baal that belongs to your father, and cut down the Asher pole besides it. Build a well-constructed altar to the Lord your God on top of this mount. Take the second bull and offer it as a burnt offering with the Lord of an Asher pole you cut down. So Gideon took 10 of his male servants and did as the Lord had told him. But because he was too afraid of his father's family and the men of the city who to do it in the daytime, he did it at the night. When the men of his city got up in the morning, they found Baal's altar torn down, the Asher's pole beside it to cut down, and the second bull offered up in the altar that had been built. They said to each other, "Who did this?" After they made a thorough investigation, they said, "Gideon, son of Joash, did it." Then the men of the city said to Joash, "Bring out your son. He must die because he bore down Baal's altar and cut down the Asheroth pole besides it." But Joash said to all who stood against him, "Would you plead Baal's case for him? Would you save him? Whoever pleads this case will be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him plead his own case, because someone tore down his altar." That day he was called Jebulah, since Josh said, "Let Baal contend with him, because he tore down his altar." The sign of the fleece, all the Midianites, Amalekites, and Canaanites gathered together, crossed over the Jordan, and camped in the Jezreel valley. The Spirit of the Lord enveloped Gideon, and he blew the ram's horn and the Abizarites rallied them behind. He sent messengers to the Manassites who rallied behind him. He also sent messages to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, who also came to meet him. Then Gideon said to God, "If you will deliver Israel to my land, as you said, I will put a wool fence here in the threshing hole. If dew is only on the flints and all the ground is dry, I will know that you will deliver Israel to my strength, as you said." And that is what happened. When he got up early in the morning, he squeezed the fence and drew dew out of it, filling a bowl with water. Gideon said to God, "Do not be angry with me. Let me speak one more time. Please allow me to make one more test with the fleece. Let it remain dry, and the dew be all over the ground." That night God did as Gideon requested. Only the fleece was dry, and the dew was all over the ground. God selects Gideon's army. Jotham, that is Gideon, and all the troops who were with him got up early and camped beside the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them, below the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many troops for me to hand the Midianites over to them, or else Israel might elevate themselves over to me and say, 'My own strength saved me.' Now announce to the troops, whoever is fearful and trembling may turn back and leave Mount Gilead." So 22,000 of the troops turned back, and then 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, "There are still too many troops. Take them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. If I say to you, This one can go with you. He can be go. But if I lay about everyone, this one cannot go with you. He cannot go. So he brought the troops down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, separate everyone who laps water with his tongue like a dog. Do the same with everyone who kneels to drink. The number of those who lapped with their hands in their mouth has 300 men. And all the rest of the troops knelt to drink water. The Lord said to Gideon, I will deliver you with the 300 men who lapped and said, hand the Midianites over to you, but everyone else is to go home. So Gideon sent the Israelites to their tents, but kept the 300 troops who took the provisions and their trumpets. The camp of Midian was below him in the valley. Gideon spies on the Midian camp. The night of the Lord said to him, get up and attack. Get up and attack. The night the Lord said to him, get up and attack the camp, for I have handed it over to you. But if you are afraid to attack the camp, go down with Purah, your servant. Listen to what they say, and then you will be encouraged to attack the camp. So he went down with Purah, his servant, to the outposts of the troops who were in the camp. Now the Midianites and Amalekites and the Canaanites who settled down in the valley like a swarm of locusts, and their camels were immutable as the sand as the seashore. When Gideon arrived, there was a man telling his friend about the dream. He said, listen, I had a dream. A loaf of barley bread came trembling into the Midian camp, struck a tent, and it fell. The loaf turned the tent upside down, and then it collapsed. His friend answered, this is nothing less than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash the Israelite. God had handed the entire Midian camp over to him. Gideon attacks the Midianites. When Gideon heard the account of his dream and the interpretation, he bowed in worship. He returned to Israel's camp and said, get up, for the Lord has handed the Midian camp over to you. Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies and gave each of the men a trumpet in the hand of the enemy, pitcher with a torch inside it. In the other hand, watch me, he said to them, and do what I do. When I come to the outposts of the camp, as I do, when I and everyone with me blow our trumpets, you are also to blow your trumpets all around the camp. Then you will say, for the Lord and for Gideon. Gideon and the 100 men who were with him went to the outposts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch after the Syrians had been stationed. They blew their trumpets and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew their trumpets and shattered their pitchers. They held their torches in their left hands, trumpets in their right hands, and shouted a sword at the Lord and the Gideon. Each Israelite took his position around the camp, and the entire Midian army began to run, and they cried out and fled. When Gideon's men blew their 300 trumpets, the Lord caused the men of the whole army to turn to each other and their servants. They fled to Assyria house in the direction of Zareh as far as the border of Abel Mekona near Tabor. Then the men of Israel were called from Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh, and they pursued the Midianites. The men of Ephraim during the battle. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim with his message. Come down before the intercept of the Midians and take control of the water courses ahead of them as far as Bethlehem and the Jordan. So the men of Ephraim were called out, and they took control of the water courses as far as Bethlehem and the Jordan. They captured Oreb and Seth and the 2 princes of Midian. They unlived Oreb and the rock of Oreb and the Seth of the winepress of Zeb. While they were pursuing the Midianites, they brought the head of Oreb and Seth and Gideon across the Jordan. The men of Ephraim said to him, why have you done this to us, not calling us when you went to fight against the Midianites? Then they argued with him violently. So he said to them, what have I done now compared to you? What have I done now compared to you? It is not gleaming of Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abiezer. God handed over to you Oreb and Zeb, the 2 princes of Midian. What was I able to do compared to you? When he said this, their anger against him subsided. Gideon pursues the kings of Midian. Gideon and the 300 men came to the Jordan and crossed it. They were exhausted but still in pursuit. He said to the men of the Southers, "Please give us loaves of bread to the troops under my command, because they are exhausted, for I am pursuing Sibra and Samuel, the king of Midian." But the princes of Zebulun asked, "Are Sibra and Zalom now in your hands, that we should give bread to your army?" Gideon replied, "Very well. Then the Lord has handed Sibra over to me. I will tear you flesh and thorns and berries in the wilderness." He went over there to Penuel and asked the same thing from them. The men of Penuel answered, just as the men of Sibra had answered. He also told the men of Penuel, "When I return safely, I will tear down this tower." Now Sibra and Penuel were in the Karkor, and with them in their army of about 15,000 men, who was left of the entire army of the Kedemites. Those who had been killed were 120,000 men. Gideon traveled on the Gavan route of east and Denhaba and attacked their army, while the army felt secure. Sarah and fled and pursued them. He captured these two kings of Midian and routed the entire army. Gideon, son of Joash, returned from the battle of the ascents of Heres. He captured the youth from the men of Sukkot and interrogated him. The youth wrote down for him the names of the 70 leaders and elders of Sukkot. Then he went to the men of Sukkot and said, "Here is Sabbath, you taunted me about them, saying, 'Are Sabbath and Sabbath now in your power, that we should give bread to your exhausted men?'" So he took the elders in the city, and he took some thorns and berries from the wilderness, and he discipled the men of Sukkot with them. He also tore down the tower of Penuel and unlived the men of the city. He said, "Zibra and Samuel, what kind of men did you unalive at Tabor?" "They were like you," they said, "each resembling the son of a king." So he said, "They were my brothers and the sons of my mothers. As the Lord lives, if you had let them live, I would not alive you." Then, as he said to his firstborns, "Get up and unalive them," the youth did not draw his sword, for he was afraid he was still a youth. Sabbath Samras, "Get up and strike us down yourself, as a man is judged in his strength." So Gideon got up, unalived Sabbath and took the crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. Gideon's legacy. When the Israelites said to Gideon, "Rule over us, you as well as your sons and your grandsons, for you delivered us from the power of Midian." But Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you." Welcome. "The Lord will rule over you." Then he said to them, "Let me make a request for you. Everyone give me an earring from his plunder." Now the enemy had gold earrings, and they were Ishmaelites. They said, "We agree to give them." So they spread on a cloak, and everyone threw an earring from his plunder on it. The weight of the gold earrings he requested was 43 pounds of gold, in addition to the crescent ornaments of the ear pendants, the purple garments, and the kings of Midian, and the chains of the neck of the camels. Gideon made an effort from all this and put it in Ophrah, his hometown. Then all Israel prostituted themselves by worshipping it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his household. So Midian was subdued before the Israelites, and they were no longer a threat. The land had peace for 40 years during the days of Gideon. Jebrun, that is Gideon, son of Josh, went back to live at the house. Gideon had 70 sons and his own offspring, since he had many wives. His concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and they named him Abimelech. Then Gideon, son of Joash, died at the old age and was buried in the tomb of his father Joshua in Mabras of the Abizarites. When Gibeon died, the Israelites turned and prostituted themselves by worshipping the Baals and made Baal their god. The Israelites did not remember the Lord their God, who had rescued them from the land of the enemies around them. They did not show kindness to the house of Judah, that is Gideon, for all the good he had done for Israel. Abimelech became king. Abimelech, son of Judah, went to Shechem and spoke to his uncles and to his mother's whole clan, saying, "Please speak in the hearing of all the citizens of Shechem. It is better for you that 70 men than all the sons of Judah to rule over you, or that one man rule over you. Remember that I am your own flesh and blood." His mother's relatives spoke to all the words about him in the hearing, and all the citizens of Shechem, and they were favorable to Abimelech, for they said, "He is our he 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 is our brother." So they gave him 70 pieces of silver from the temple of Baal. Abimelech used to hire worthless and reckless men, and they followed him. He sent to his father's house in Nophrais and unalived his 70 brothers, the sons of Judah, on top of the large stone. But Jonathan, the young son of Judah, survived because he hid. Then all the citizens of Judah gathered together and proceeded to make Abimelech king of the oak of the pillar of Shechem. Jotham's parable. Jotham's parable. When they told Jotham, he climbed to the top of the Mount Gilead, raised his voice, and called to them, "Listen to me, citizens of Shechem. May God listen to you." The trees decided to anoint a king over themselves. They said to the olive tree, "Reign over us." But the olive tree said to them, "Should I stop giving my oil that people used to honor both God and man, the rule over the trees?" Then the tree said to the fig tree, "Come and regain over us. Come and regain over us." But the fig tree said to them, "Should I stop giving my sweetness and my good fruit and rule over these trees?" "Come on and reign over us." But the grapevine said to them, "Should I stop giving my wine that cheers both God and man and rule over the trees?" Finally, all the trees said to the bramble, "Come and reign over us." The bramble said to the trees, "If you really are anointing me as king over you, come and find refuge in my shade. But if not, may fire come out from the bramble and consume the cedars of Lebanon. Now, if you have acted faithfully and honestly in making Abdullah king, if you have done well in Jerubbaal and his family, and if you have rewarded him appropriately for what he did for your for my father fought for you risked his life and rescued you from Midian, and now you have attacked my father's family today. Unalive his 70 sons on top of a large stone, and made Abimelech, the son of his slave woman, king of the citizens of Shechem, because he is your brother. So, if you have acted faithfully and honestly with Jupiter in the house of this day, rejoice in Abimelech, and may he also rejoice in you. But if not, may the fire come from Abimelech and consume the citizens of Shechem and Beth Milo, and may fire come from the citizens of Shechem and Beth Milo and consume Abimelech. Then Jordan fled, escaping to Beer, and lived there because of his brother Abimelech. Abimelech's punishment. When Abimelech had rule over Israel 3 years, God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem. They treated Abimelech deceitfully, so that the crime against the 70 sons of Jebediah might come to justice, and their blood would be avenged by their brother Abimelech, who unalived them, and the citizens of Shechem, who had helped him unalive his brothers. The citizens of Shechem rebelled against him, and by putting men in ambush on top of the troops of the mountains. They robbed everyone who passed by them on the road. So this was reported to Abimelech. Gal, son of Ebed, came with his brothers and crossed into Shechem. And the citizens of Shechem trusted him, so that they went out to the countryside and harvested grapes from their vineyards. They trampled the grapes, and he held a celebration when they went to the house of their God. And as they ate and drank, they cursed Abimelech, Gal, son of Ebed, said, "Who is Abimelech and who is Shechem, and that he should serve him? Isn't the son of Shebaniah and isn't Zebul his officer, that you are to serve the men of Habor, the father of Shechem? Why should we serve Abimelech? If only these people, if only what? If only these people were in my power, I would remove Abimelech." So he said to Abimelech, "Gather your army and come out." When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gal, son of Ebed, he was angry. So he secretly sent messengers to Abimelech, saying, "Beware, Gal, son of Ebed, with his brothers have come to Shechem and are turning the city against you. Now, tonight you are the troops with you, and you wait in ambush in the countryside. Then get up early in the sunrise, attack the city. Then, when he and the troops who are with him come out against you, do to him wherever you can." So Abimelech and all the troops with him got up at night and waited in ambush for Shechem in 4 units. Gal, son of Abedad, went out and stood at the entrance of the city gate, and Abimelech and all the troops were with him, and he got up from their ambush. When Gal saw the troops, he said to Zebul, "Look, troops are coming down in the mountain tops." But Zebul said to him, "The shadows of the mountains look like men to you." Then Gal spoke again, "Look, troops are coming down in the central part of the land, and the 1 unit is coming from the direction of the diviner's oaks." Zebul replied, "What do you have to say now?" He said, "Who is Abimelech in that he should serve him? Aren't these the troops that you despise? Now go and fight them." So Gal went out leading, and the citizens of Shechem and fought against Abimelech. But Abimelech pursued him, and Gal fled before him. Numerous bodies were strewed as far as the entrance of the city gate. Abimelech stayed in Haroma, and Zebul drove Gal and his brothers from Shechem. The next day, when the people of Shechem went to the countryside, this was reported to Abimelech. He took the troops, drove them into the 3 companies, and waited in ambush in the countryside. He looked at the people who were coming out of the city, so he arose against them and struck them down. Then Abimelech and his units that were with him rushed forward and took their stand at the entrance of the city gates. The 2 units rushed against all who were in the countryside and struck them down. So Abimelech fought against the city that entire day, captured it, and alive the people who were in it. Then he tore down the city and sowed it with and then he tore down the city and sowed it with salt. When all the citizens of the tower of Shalem heard it, they entered in the inner chamber of the temple of Evim. Then it was reported that to Abimelech that all the citizens of the tower of Shechem had gathered. So Abimelech and all the troops who were with him went up to the mountain Zalmon. Abimelech took his axe in his hand and cut a branch of trees. He picked up the branch, put it in his shoulder, and said to the troops who were with him, "Hurry and do what you have seen me do." Each of the troops also cut his own branch and followed Abimelech. They put the branches against the inner chamber and set it on fire. About 1,000 men and women died, including all the men of the tower of Shechem. Abimelech went to Tepez, camped against it, and captured it. There was a strong tower inside the city, and all the men, women, and citizens in the city fled there. They locked themselves in and went up in the roof of the tower. When Abimelech came to attack the tower, he approached its entrance to set it on fire, but a woman threw up a portion of the milestone on Abimelech's head and fractured his skull. He quickly called his armor bearer and said to him, "Draw your sword and unalive me, or they'll say, drive your, drive your sword and unalive me, or they'll say about me, a woman unalived him." So his armor bearer ran him through, and he died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they all went home. In his way, God brought back Abimelech's evil, and that evil was on his way. God brought back Abimelech's evil. The evil was Abimelech had done to his father, and that he unalived his 70 brothers. God also brought back to the men of Shechem all their evil. So the curse of Joram, son of Jubal, came upon them. Tola and Jar. After Abimelech, Tola and son of Phutza and Dito became judges and began to deliver Israel. He was from Issachar and lived in Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim. Tola judged Israel 23 years, and when he died, was buried in Shamir. After him came Jair and Gilead, who judged Israel 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys. They had 30 towns in Gilead, which are still called Jair's villages today. Then Jair died. He was buried in Shaman. Israel's rebellion and repentance. When Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, they worshipped the Baals and Astonis, the gods of Aram, Sidon, and Moab, and all the gods of Ammon and all Philistines. They abandoned the Lord and did not worship him. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he sold them to the Philistines and the Ammonites. They shattered and crushed the Israelites that year, and for 18 years they did the same to all the Israelites who were on the side of the Jordan in the land of Ammonites. And the Ammonites also crossed the Jordan to fight against Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Israel was greatly oppressed. So they cried out to the Lord, saying, "We have sinned against you. We have abandoned our God and worshipped the Baals." The Lord said to the Israelites, "When the Egyptians, Ammonites, and Amalekites, Philistines, Sindlites, and Amalekites oppressed you, you cried out to me. Did I not deliver you from them? But you have abandoned me and worshipped other gods. Therefore, I will not deliver you again. Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them deliver you whenever you are oppressed." Let them deliver you whenever you are oppressed. But the Israelites said, "We have sinned. Deal with us as you see fit. Only rescue us today." So they got rid of the foreign gods among them and worshipped the Lord, and he became weary of Israel's misery. The Amalekites were called together, and they camped in Gilead. So the Israelites assembled and camped at Mizpah. The rulers of Gilead said to one another, "Which man will begin the fight against the Amalekites? He will be the leader of the Ammonites, inhabitants of Gilead." Jebuel becomes Israel's leader. Jebuelites and Gileadites were a valiant warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute, and Gilead was his father. Gilead's wife bore him sons, and when they grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, "You will have no inheritance in our father's family, because you are the son of another woman." So Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob. Then some worthless men joined the land of Tob. And went on raids with them. So sometime later, the Ammonites fought against Israel. When the Ammonites made war with Israel, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said to him, "Come to be our commander, and let's fight the Ammonites." Jephthah replied to the elders of Gilead, "Didn't you hate me and drive me out of my father's family? Well, then why have you come to me now when you are in trouble?" They answered to her, "That's true, but now we turn to you. Come with us, fight the Ammonites, and you will become leaders of all the inhabitants of Gilead." So Jephthah said to them, "If you are bringing me back to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them to me, I will be your leader." The elders of the Gilead said to Jephthah, "The Lord is our witness. If we don't do as you say." The Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead. The people made him the leader and commanded, and Jephthah repeated all of his terms in the presence of the Lord at Mizpah. Jephthah reflects Ammonites' claims. Jephthah sent messages to the king of Ammonites asking, "What do you want against me, that you have come to fight me in my land? The king of the Ammonites said that to Joseph's messengers. When Israel came from the Egypt, they seized my land from the Arnon and the Jab and the Jordan. Now restore it peacefully. Jabez again sent messages to the king of the Ammonites to tell them. Uh, uh, Jabez again sent messages to the king of the Ammonites to tell them. This is what Jesse said. Israel did not take away the land of Moab on the land of Ammon, but when they came from Egypt, Israel traveled through the wilderness in the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. Israel sent messages to the king of Edom, saying, "Please let us travel through your land." But the king of Edom would not listen. They also sent messengers to the king of Moab, but he refused. So Israel stayed in Kadesh. Then they traveled through the wilderness and around the lands of Edom and Moab. They came to the east side of the land of Moab and camped into the other side of the Arnon, but did not enter into the territory of Moab, but for the Arnon was the boundary of Moab. Then Israel sent messengers to Shidon, the king of Amorites, king of Heshbon. Israel said to him, "Please let us travel through your land of the country." But Sidon would not trust Israel to pass through his territory. Instead, Jordan gathered all his troops camped in Jaz and fought with Israel. Then the Lord God of Israel handed over Hishion and all his troops of Israel, and they defeated them. But Israel took possession of the entire land of the Ammonites who lived in the country. They took possession of all. They took possession of all the territory of the Ammonites, Ammons, but from the Arnon and the Jabbok, and from the wilderness of Jordan, the Lord of Israel has now driven out the Ammonites before his peoples Israel, and will now force and will you now force us out? Isn't it true that you can have whatever your god Chemoth conquers for you? Whoa, who's Chemoth? Chemoth? Really, it's a god? Whoa. They worship this thing? Looks like a bull. It's a supreme god. Interesting. Damn. So anything that their god conquers for them. Oh, that's crazy, bro. The Lord God of Israel has now driven out the Ammonites before his people Israel, and you will now force us out. Isn't it true that you can have whatever your God Shemoth conquers for you? Uh, what the hell? You can have whatever your God Shemoth conquers for you, and then we can have whatever our Lord our God conquers for us. Now, are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever contend with Israel or fight against him? Well, Israel lived 300 years in Shishon and Arnon and their surrounding villages and all in the cities that are in the banks of the Arnon. Why didn't you take them back at the time? I have not sinned against you, but you are doing me wrong by fighting against me. Let the Lord, who is the judge, decide today between the Israelites and the Ammonites. But the king of the Ammonites would not listen to the Jehovah's message that he sent him. There was this vow and sacrifice. The Spirit of the Lord came into the Spirit of the Lord came to Jephthah, and who traveled through Gilead and Manasseh, and then through Mizpah and Gilead. He crossed over to the Ammonites from Mizpah to Gilead. If you in fact hand over the Ammonites to me, "Whoever comes out of the doors of my house to greet me, when I return to safety from the Ammonites will belong to the Lord. I will offer that person as a burnt offering." Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites. Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord handed them over to him. He defeated 20 of their cities with the great slaughter, from Aroer all the way to the entrance of Minith and to Abel Kares. So the Ammonites were subdued before the Israelites. When Japhud went to his home in Mizpah, there was his daughters coming there was his daughters coming out to meet him with the Ammonites and dancing. She was in she was his only child, and she had no other son or daughters besides her. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, "No, not my daughter. You have devastated me. You have brought great misery on me. I have given my word to the Lord, and I cannot take it back." Then she said to him, "My father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you have said to the Lord. Have brought vengeance on your enemies." That night she also said to her father, "Let me do this one thing. Let me wander 2 months through the mountains with my friends and mourn my virginity." "Go," he said. And he sent her away for 2 months. So she left with her friends and mourned her virginity as she wandered through the mountains. At the end of the month, she returned to her father. He kept the vow that he had made about her, and she had never been intimate with a man. Now it became a custom in Israel that 4 days each year the young women of Israel would commemorate the daughter of would commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. Conflict with Beraim. The men of Ephraim were called together and crossed the Jordan. Of what the hell? I don't get it. Hey, okay, good. Conflict with Ephraim. The men of Ephraim were called together and crossed the Jordan of Sapphim. They said to the Jephthah, "Why have you crossed over to fight against the Ammonites, but didn't call us to go with you? You will burn your house with, we will burn your house with you in it." The Jephthah said to them, "My people and I had a bitter conflict with the Ammonites, so I called for you, but you didn't deliver me from their power. When I saw that you weren't going to deliver me, I took my life in my own hands and crossed over to the Ammonites, and the Lord handed them over to me. Why, then, have you come today to fight against me?" When Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead, they fought and defeated Ephraim. Because Ephraim, because Ephraim said to have said, "You Gileadites are Zabran fugitives." In the territories of Ephraim and Manasseh, the Gileadites captured the fort of the third land of Ephraim. Whenever a fugitive from Ephraim said, "Let me cross over," the Gileadites asked him, "Are you in Ephraim's?" If he answered no, they told him, "Please say Sibylline." If he said Sibylline, because he could not pronounce it correctly, they seized him and executed him in the fords of the Jordan. At that time, 42,000 from Ephraim died. Wow. 42,000? Jephthah judged Israel 6 years, and when he died, he was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. Isban Elon, Isban Elon and Abdon. Isban, who was from Bethlehem, judged Israel after Jephthah and had 30 sons. He gave his 30 daughters in marriage to men outside the tribe and brought back 30 wives for his sons from outside the tribe. Isban judged Israel 7 years, and he died. He was buried in Bethlehem. Elon, from Elon, who was from Zebulun, judged Israel above after Ibzan. He judged Israel 10 years, and when he died, he was buried in Ijon in the land of Zebulun. After Elon, the son of Israel, who was from Elon, judged Israel, he had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. Abdon judged Israel 8 years, and when he died, He was buried in Persia in the land of Ephraim, in the hill country of the Amalekites. Birth of Samson. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight, and the Lord's handled in the Israelites 40 years. There was a certain man from the family of Dan, who was named of Manoch, who his wife was unable to conceive and had no children. The angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, "Is it true that you are unable to conceive and have no children, but you will conceive and give birth to a son? Now please be careful not to drink wine or beer, or to eat anything unclean, for indeed you will conceive and give birth to a son. You must never cut his hair, because the boy will be a Nazir for the son to God from birth. And he will begin to save Israel from the power of the Philistines." Then the woman went and told her husband, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an awe-inspiring angel of God. I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name. He said to me, 'You will conceive and give birth to a son. Therefore, do not drink wine or beer, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be of Nazareth, and from the birth until today of his death." Manoah prayed, and the Lord Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, "Please, Lord, let the man of God you sent come again to us and teach us what we should do for the boy who will be born." God listened to Manoah, and now the angel of God came again, and the woman. She was sitting in the field, and her husband Manoah was not with her. The woman ran quickly to her husband and told him, "The man who came to me the other day has just came back." So Manoah got up and followed his wife. Then he came to the man. He asked, "Are you the man who spoke to your wife?" "I am," he said. Then Manoah asked, "Then when your words come when then your Then Manoah asked, "When your words come true, that will be the boy's responsibilities and work." The angel of the Lord answered Manoah, "Your wife needs to do everything I told her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, to drink wine or beer, and she must not eat anything unclean. Your wife must first do everything I have commanded her. Please stay here," Manoah told him, "and we will prepare a young goat for you." The angel of the Lord said to him, "If I stay, I won't eat your food. But if you want to prepare a burnt offering, offer it to the Lord." Manoah did not know he was in the angel of the Lord. Then Manoah said to him, "What is your name, so that we may honor you when your words come true?" "Why did you ask my name?" the angel of the Lord asked him, "since it is beyond understanding." What? "Why is my name, since it is beyond?" Manoah took a young goat and of grain of Favorite and offered them to the rock of the Lord, offered it on the rock of the Lord, who did something miraculous while Manoah and his wife were watching. Then the flame went up from the altar of the sky. The angel of the Lord went up in its flame. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell face down on the ground. And the angel of the Lord did not appear again, and Manoah and his wife. Then Manoah realized that it was an angel of the Lord. "We're suddenly going to die," he said to his wife, "because we have seen God." But his wife said to him, "If the Lord had intended us to end life, wouldn't have accepted a burnt offering and grain from us, and he would not have shown us all these things or spoken to us like this." So the woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. And the boy grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Estel. Samson's riddle. Samson went to the Tinath and saw a young Palestinian woman there, and he went back to his father. Alright, guys, how are you guys? I hope you guys are doing good. We are currently reading the Bible, and hopefully we get through all this soon. Hopefully we are able to finish it. I believe it is possible to read the Bible in like 24 hours. I don't know if I'm gonna do that. But yeah, one more. But Samson told his father, "Get her to me, she is right for me." But the father and the mother did not know that this was from the Lord, who wanted the Philistine to provide an opportunity for the confrontation. At the time, the Philistines were ruling Israel. Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Suddenly a young lion came roaring with him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. Then he went and spoke to the woman because she seemed right to Samson. After some time, when he returned to marry her, he left the road to see the lion's carcass, and there was a swarm of bees with honey in the carcass. He swooped some honey into his hands and ate it as it went along. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some of them, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had scooped the honey from the lion's carcass. His father went to visit the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there. A young, a young men were accustomed to do. When the Philistines saw him, they brought him 30 men to accompany him. "Let me tell you a riddle," Samson said to them. "If you can explain it to me during the 7 days of the feast and figure it out, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you can't explain it to me, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes." "Tell us your riddle," they replied. "Let's hear it." So he said to them, Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. After 3 days they were unable to explain the riddle. On the fourth day they said to Samson's wife, "Persuade your husband to explain the riddle to us, or we will burn you and your father's family to death. Did you invite us here to rob us?" Yeah. After 3 days they were unable to explain. Okay. So Samson's his wife came to him, sweeping, and said, You hate me and don't love me, so you told my people the riddle, but haven't explained it to me. Look, he said, I haven't been explaining it to my father and mother, so why should I explain it to you? She swept the whole 7 days of the feast, and at last, the seventh day, he explained it to her because she had nagged him so much. So she explained it to her people. On the seventh day, before the sunset, the men of the city said to him, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than lion?" So he said to them, "If you hadn't plowed with your young cow, you wouldn't know my riddle." The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and he went down to Ashkelon and unlived 30 of their men. He stripped them and gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle in a rage. Samson returned to the father's house, and his wife had given to one of the men who had accompanied him. Samson's revenge. Later on, during the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat as a gift and visited his wife. I want to go with my wife to her room, but he said, but her father would not let him enter. So I was sure you hated her. Her father said to, so I gave her to one of the men who accompanied you. Isn't her younger sister more beautiful than she is? Why not take her instead? Samson said to them, this time I will do blameless when I harmed the Philistines. So he went out and caught 300 foxes. He took torches and turned the foxes tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. Then he ignited the torch and released the foxes into the stand. The kings of the Philistines, he burned a pile of grains in the standing grain as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Then the Philistines asked, "Who did this?" They were told it was Samson, the Timnite son-in-law, before he took Samson's wife and gave her to his companions. So the Philistines won to her, and her father burned them to death. Then Samson told them, "Because you did this, I swear that I won't rest until I have taken vengeance on you." He tore them limb from limb, and then went down and stayed in the cave at the rock of Etam. The Philistines went up against camped in Judah and raided Lehi. So the men of Judah said, "Why have you attacked us?" They replied, "We have come to tie Samson up and pay him back for what he did to us." The 3,000 men of Judah went to the cave of the rock of Edom, and they asked Samson, "Did you realize that Philistines rule us? What have you done to us? I have done to them what they did to me When they did it to me, he answered. They said to him, You've come to tie You've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines. Then Samson told them, Swear to me that you yourself won't unalive me. No, he said, we won't unalive you, but we will tie you up securely and hand you over to them. So that they tied him up with two new ropes and led him away from the rock. Then they came to Lath, and the Philistines came to him from under. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and the ropes that were on his arms and the wrists became like burnt flax and fell off. He found a fresh jar of bone on a donkey, reached out his hand, took it, and unalived 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, With the jawbone of a donkey, I have. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have unalived 1,000 men. Then he finished speaking and threw away a jawbone and named the plain Ramah. He became very thirsty and called out to the Lord, You have accomplished this great victory through your servant. Must I now die in the thirst and fall into the hands of an uncircumcised? So God split a hollow place in the ground at Levi, and the water came out of it. After Samson drank, his strength returned, and he received. This is why he named it Enkar, which is still in Lehi today. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Samson and Delilah. Samson went to Gaza, and when he saw a prostitute and went to bed with her, then the Gazites heard that Samson was there. They surrounded the place and waited in ambush for him, and all the night in the city gate. They kept quiet all night, saying, Let's wait until dawn. Then they will unalive him. But Samson stayed in bed until midnight. Then he got up, took hold of the door of the city gate along with the two gateposts, and pulled them out, bar and bar. He pulled them out on his shoulders and took them at the top of the mountain overlooking Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman named Delilah, who lived in the Sorek Valley. The Philistines' leaders went to her and said, Persuade him to tell you where his great strength comes from, so he can overpower him, tie him up, and make him helpless. Each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, Please tell me, where does your great strength come from? How could someone tie you up and make you helpless? Samson told her, If they tie me up with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I will become weak and be like any other man. The Philistine leaders brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried up, and she tied him up with him. While the men in ambush were waiting in her room, she called out to him, Samson, the Philistines are here. But he snapped the bowstrings as a stand of the yarn snaps. When it touches fire, the secret of his strength remained unknown. Then Delilah said to Samson, You have mocked me and told me lies. Won't you please tell me how you can be tied up? He told her, If you tie me up with new ropes and have never been used, I will become weak and be like any other man. Delilah took new ropes, tied him up with his and shouted to them, Samson, the Philistines are here. But while the men in ambush were waiting in her room, he snapped the ropes off his arms like a thread. Then Delilah said to Samson, You have mocked me all along and told me lies. Tell me how you can be tied up. He told her, If you wave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric of a loom. She fastened the braids with a pin and called to him, Samson, the Philistines are here. He woke from his sleep and pulled out the pin with the loom of the web. How can you say I love you, she told him, when your heart is not with me? This is the 3rd time you have mocked me and not told me that what makes your strength so great. Because she nagged him day after day and pleaded with him until she wore him out. He told her and said to her, he told her the whole truth and said to her, My hair has never been cut because I am unnatural That's right, to God forbid. If I have shaved, my strength will leave me, and I will become weak, and I will be like any other man. When Delilah realized what she had told her the whole truth, she sent this message to the Philistine leaders: "Come one more time, for he has told me the whole truth." The Philistine leaders came to her and brought the silver with them. Then she let him fall asleep on her lap, and they called a man to shave off the 7 braids on his head, and in the way she made him helpless, and his strength left him. Then she cried out, "Samson, the Philistines are here." Then he awoke from his sleep and said, "I will escape as I did before and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Samson's defeat and death. The Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him in bronze shackles, and he was forced to grind grain in the prison. But his hair began to grow back after it had been shaved. Now the Philistine leaders gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to their god, Dagon. They rejoiced and said, "Our God has handed over our enemy Samson to us." And the people saw him. They praised their God and said, "Our God has handed over to us our enemy who destroyed our land, who multiplied our dead." When they were in good spirits, they said, "Bring Samson here to entertain us." So they brought Samson from prison, and they entertained them. They they had him stand between the pillars. Samson said to the young man who was leading him by the hand, "Let let lead me where I can feel the pillars supporting the temple, so I can lean against them." The temple was full of men and women, and all the leaders of the Philistines were here, and all about 3,000 men and women were on the roof watching Samson entertain them. He called out, Lord God, please remember me, strengthen me, God, just once more. With one act of vengeance, let me pay back the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars, supporting the temple, and leaned against them, one of his right hand and the other on his left. Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." He pushed with all his might, and the temple fell on the leaders and all the people in it. And those he unalived at his death were more than those he had unalived in his life. Then his brothers and his father's family, and his, then his father's family came down, carried him back, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtal in the tomb of his father Manoah. So he judged Israel 20 years. Micah's priest. There was a man from the hill country at Ephraim named Micah. He said to his mother, "The 1,100 pieces of silver taken from you that I heard you placed a curse on. Here's the silver. I took it." Then his mother said, "My son, may you be blessed by the Lord. You be blessed." What the hell? Then his mother said, "My son, may you be blessed by the Lord." He returned the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother, and his mother said, "I personally consecrate the silver to the Lord my God, son's benefit, to make a carved image and silver idol. I will give it back to you." So he returned the silver of his mother, and she took out 5 pounds of silver and gave it to the silversmith. He made it to a carved image and a silver idol, and it was in Micah's house. This man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household idols, and installed one of his sons to be his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to him. There was a young man, a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, who was staying within the clan of Judah. And the man left the town of Bethlehem in Judah and stayed wherever he could find a place. On his way he came to Micah's home in the hill country of Ephraim. "Where did you come from?" Micah asked him. He answered him, "I am the Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am going to stay wherever I can find place." Micah replied, "Stay with me and be my father and priest, and I will give you 4 ounces of silver every year, along with your clothing and provisions." So Levi went in and agreed to stay with the man. So, and the young man became like one of his sons. Micah comes and consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in Micah's house. Then Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, because the Levite has become my priest." Dan's invasion and idolatry. In those days there was no king of Israel, and the Danite tribe was looking for territory to occupy. Up at the time, the territory had been captured by them, but the tribes of Israel, so the Danites sent out 5 brave men from all the clans, from Zorah to Eshtaol, to scout the land to explore it. They told them, "Go explore the land." They came to the hill country of Ephraim as far as the home of Micah and spent the night there. While they were near Mount Shish, they recognized the accent of the young Levite who was with them to so they so they recognized that so they went over to him and asked, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is keeping you here?" He told them, "This is what Micah has done for me. He has hired me, and I became his priest." Then they said to him, "Please inquire of God for us to determine if we still have a successful journey." The priest told them, "Go in peace. The Lord is watching over the country you are going. The Lord is watching over the country you are going." The 5 men left and came to Laish. They saw that the people who were there were living securely in the name in the same way as the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting. There was nothing lacking in the land and no oppressive ruler. They were far from the Sidonians, having no alliance with anyone. When the men went back to their relatives of Zorah and Eshtaol, the relatives asked them, "What did you find out?" They answered, "Come on, let's attack them, for we have seen the land and it's very good. Why wait? Don't hesitate to go in and invade, take possession of the land. When you get there, you will come to an unsuspecting people and as spacious land, for God has handed it over to you. It is a place where nothing on earth is lacking." 600 Danites and departed from Zorah and Eshtaol armed with the weapons of war. They went up and camped with Kijijila in Judah. This is why the place is called the Camp of Dan today. It is the west of Kirajim. From there, they traveled in the hill country of Ephraim and arrived at Micah's house. The 5 men who had gone to scout the land of Javish told their brothers, "Did you know that there are an ephod, household gods, and a carved image of a silver idol in these houses? Do now think about what you should do. Now think about what you should do." So they detoured there and went to the house of the young Levite at the home of Micah and greeted him. The 600 Danite men were standing by the entrance of the city gate, armed with their weapons of war. Then the 5 men who had gone to scout the land went in and took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and the silver idols, while the priest was standing by the entrance of the city gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. When they entered Micah's house and took the carved images and the ephod, the hold idols, and the silver idols, the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" They told him, "Be quiet, keep your mouth shut. Come with us and be a father and a priest to us. It is better for you to be a priest for the household of one person, or for you to be a priest for a tribe and a family in Israel." So the priest was pleased and took his ephod, household idols, and carved images and went with the people. They prepared to leave, putting their dependent livestock and possessions in front of them. After they were some distance from Micah's house, the men who were in the houses near it mustered and caught up with the Danites. They called the Danites who turned to face them and said to Micah, "What's the matter with you that you mustered the men?" He said, "You took the gods I had made and the priests and went away. What do I have left? How can you say to me, 'What's the matter with you?'" That Danite said to him, "Don't raise your voice against us, or angry men will attack you, and you and your family will lose your lives." The Danites went on their way, and Micah turned to go back home because he saw that they were stronger than he was. After they had taken the gods Mika had made and the priest that belonged to him, they went to lavish when they went to Laish, and to a quiet and unsuspecting people. They unalived them with their swords and buried the city. There was no one to rescue them because it was far from Sidon, and they had no alliance with anyone. It was in a valley that belonged to Bethlehem. Beth Rohob. They rebuilt the city and lived in it. They named the city Dan after the name of their ancestors Dan, who was born in Israel. The city was merely named Laish. The Danites set up in the carved images for themselves. Jonathan, son of Germish, son of Moses, and his sons were priests for the Danite tribe until the time of the exile from the land. So they set up from themselves Micah's carved image that he had made, and it was there as long as the house of God was in Shiloh. Outrage in Benjamin. In those days when there was no king in Israel, Levites stayed in a remote part of the hill country, and Ephraim acquired a woman from Bethlehem in Judah, his wife Kubicon. She was unfaithful to him and left him for her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah. She was there for 4 months. Then her husband got up and followed her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. His seven he had his servants with him and a pair of donkeys. So he brought him to her father's house. And when the girl's father saw him, he gladly welcomed him. His father-in-law and his girl's father detained him, and he stayed with him for 3 days. They ate, drank, and spent the night there. On the fourth day, they got up early in the morning and prepared to go. But the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Have something to eat to keep your strength, and then you can go." So they sat down, and the two of them ate and drank together. Then the girl's father said to the man, "Please agree to stay overnight and enjoy yourselves." The man got up to go, but his father-in-law persuaded him, so he stayed and spent the night there again. He got up early in the morning on the fifth day to leave, but the girl's father said to him, "Please keep up your strength." So they waited until uh, so please keep up your strength. So they waited until late afternoon, and the two of them ate. The man got up to go with his cubicone and his servant, and his father-in-law and the girl's father said to him, "Look at like night is coming. Please spend the night. See, the day's almost over. Spend the night here. Enjoy yourself. Then you can get up early tomorrow for your journey and go home." But the man was unwilling to spend the night. He got up, departed, and arrived opposite of Jebus, that is Jerusalem. The man had his two saddled donkeys and his cubicone with him. When they were near Jebus and the day was almost gone, the servant said to his master, "Please, why not let us stop at this Jebus city and spend the night there?" But his master replied to him, "We will not stop at the foreign city where there are no Israelites. Let's move on to Gibeah. Come on," he said. "Let's try to reach one of these places and spend the night at Gibeah in Ramah." So they continued to their journey, and the sun set as they reared Gibeah in Benjamin. They stopped to go in and spend the night in Gibeah. The Levite went in and sat down in the city square, but no one took them into their home to spend the night. In the evening, an old man came in from his work in the field. He was from the hill country of Ephraim, but he was resisting in Gibeah, where the people were Benjamites. When he looked up and saw the traveler in the city square, the old man asked, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" He answered him, "We're traveling from Bethlehem in Judah, and the remote hill country of Ephraim, where I am from. I went to Bethlehem in Judah. Now I am going to the house of the Lord. No one has taken me into this home, although there's a straw feed in the donkeys, and there I have bread the wine for me. My cubicone and my servants with us. There is nothing we lack." "Welcome," said the old man. "I'll take care of everything you need. Only don't spend the night in the square." So he brought him with his house, and he fed the donkeys. Then they washed their feet and ate and drank while they were enjoying themselves. All of a sudden, a wicked man in the city surrounded the house and beat on the door. When they said to the old man who wasn't the owner of the house, "Bring out the man who came to your house so he can." So, what? So we can. What the hell? The owner of the house went in and said to him, "Please don't do this evil. My brothers, after all, this man has come to my house. Don't commit this horrible outrage. Here, let me bring out the virgin daughter and the man's cubicle now. What the hell? Abusing. What the hell? Whatever you want to. But don't commit this atrocious thing." But the man would not listen to him, so the man seized his cubicle and took her outside to them. What the hell? And abused her. What the hell? This is what they like. At daybreak, they led her early in the morning. The woman made her way back, and as it is getting light, he collapsed at the doorway of the man's house where her master was. When her master got up in the morning, opened the door in the house, and went out to leave his country, there was the woman. There was the woman. His cubicle collapsed near the doorway of the house. Collapsed at the doorway near the house with her hands on the threshold. "Get up," he told her. "Get up," he told her. What the hell? "Let's go." But there was no response, so the man put her, what the hell, on his donkey and set out for home. Then he entered his house. He picked up a knife and what the hell? What the hell? Everyone who sighed, nothing like this has ever happened, and ever since that day the Israelites came out to the land of the until now. Think it over. Think it over. Thus discuss it and speak up. War against Benjamin. All the Israelites from Dan to Beer Sheba and from the land of Gilead came out, and the community assembled as one of the bodies before the Lord at Mizah. The leaders of all the people and all the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of God's people. 400 400,000 armed foot soldiers. The Benjamins heard that the Israelites had gone up to Mizpah. The Israelites asked, "Tell us now, how did this evil act happen?" The Levite, the household of the murdered woman, answered, "I went to Gibeah in Benjamin with the cucumber to spend the night. Citizens of Gibeah came to attack me and surrounded my house at night. They intended to unalive me, but they ripped my cubicle and she died. And I took my cubicle and cut her to damn." Because they have committed a wicked outrage in Israel. Look, all of the Israelites, give your judgment and verdict here now. Then all the people stood united and said, "None of us will go to his tent and return to his house. Now this is what we will do to Gibeah, and we will attack it by now. By lot we will take 10 men out of every 100 from the tribes of Israel, and 100 out of every thousands of every 10,000 to get provisions from the troops when they go to Gibeah and Benjamin to punish them for all the outrage they committed in Israel." Then all the men of Israel gathered united against the city. When the tribes of Israel sent men throughout the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What is this evil act that they have happened among you? Hand over the wicked men in Gibeah, so we can put them to death and eradicate evil from Israel." But the Benjamins would not. But the Benjamins would not listen to their fellow Israelites. Instead, the Benjamins gathered together from their cities of Gibeah to go out and fight against the Israelites. On the day of the Benjamites mobilized 26,000 armed men from their cities, besides 700 fit young men railed by the inhabitants of Gibeah. There were 700 fit young men who were left-handed among all these troops, and all could swing a stone at a hair and not miss. The Israelites, apart from Benjamin, mobilized 400,000 armed men. Every one of them an experienced warrior, set out of Bethel and inquired of God. The Israelites asked, "Who is to go first to fight for us against the Benjamites? And the Lord answered, Judah will be the first in the morning. The Israelites set out and camped near Gibesh. The men of Israel went up against Benjamin and took their battle positions against Gibeah. The Benjamins came out of the Gibeah and slaughtered 22,000 men of Israel of the field day, and the Israelites' troops rallied and up against their battle positions in the same place where they positioned themselves in the first day. They went up against they went up, wept before the Lord evening until evening, and inquired to him, Should we again attack our brothers the Benjamites? Then the Lord answered, Fight against them. On the second day the Israelites advanced against the Benjamites, and the same day the Benjamites came out from Gibeah and to meet and slaughtered an additional 18,000 Israelites in the field. All were armed. The whole Israelite army went to Bethel, and they wept and sat before the Lord. They fasted the day until evening and offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. Then the Israelites inquired to the Lord, In these days the ark of the covenant of God was there, and Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, was serving before it. The Israelites asked, Who should we fight against our brothers the Benjamites, or should we stop? Should we stop? The Lord answered, Fight, because I will hand them over to you tomorrow. So Israel set up an ambush around Gibeah. On the third day of the Israelites fought against the Benjamites and took out their battle positions against Gibeah. And before them the Benjamites came out against the troops and were drawn away from the city. They began to attack the troops as before, enlivening 30 men of Israel in the highways of one of which of the Bethel and the other Gibeonites of the country. The Benjamites said, We are defeating them as before. But the Israelites said, Let's flee and draw them away from the city of the highway. So all the men of Israel got up from their places and took their battle positions at Baal-tar, while the Israelites in ambush charged out of their places west of Geba. Then 10,000 young men from all the Israels made a frontal assault against Gibeah, and the battle was fierce, and the Benjamites did not know that the disaster was about to strike them. The Lord defeated Benjamin in all the presence of Israel, and on the day of the Israelites slaughtered 25,500 100 men at Benjamin's were all armed. Then the Benjamins realized they had been defeated. Then the men of Israel had treated before Benjamin because they were confident in the ambush that they had set against Gibeah. The men in ambush had rushed quickly against Gibeah, and they had advanced and put the whole city in the sword. The men of Israel had a prayer signal from the men in ambush when they set up a great cloud and smoke from the city. The men of Israel would return to the battle where Benjamin had begun to strike them down, unaliving about 30 men of Israel. When they said, They defeated us before, just as they were in the first battle. But when the column of the smoke began to go up from the city, Benjamin looked behind them, and the whole city was going up in smoke. Then the men of Israel returned, and the men of Benjamin were terrified when they realized that their disaster had struck them. They retreated before the men of Israel towards the wilderness, but the battle overtook them, and those who came out of the city's mess slaughtered those between them. They surrounded the Benjaminites, pursued them, and easily overtook them near Gibeah towards the east. There were 18,000 men who died from the Benjamins, all the warriors. The Benjamins turned and fled towards the wilderness of Rimmon Rock, and Israel unalived 5,000 men in the highways. What the hell? That's crazy. They overtook them at Gibeah and struck 2,000 more dead. At all the Benjamites died who died that they were 25,000 armed men. All were warriors, but 600 men escaped into the wilderness of Turim Rock and stayed there 4 months. The men of Israel turned back against the other Benjamites and unalived them with their swords. The entire city, the animals, and everything that remained. They also burned all the cities that remained. Brides for Benjamin. The men of Israel had sworn an oath at the Mizpah. None of us will give his daughters to Benjamin in marriage. So he
So the people went to Bethel and sat there before God until evening. They wept loudly and bitterly and cried out, "Why, Lord God of Israel, has it occurred? The one tribe is missing in Israel today." The next day the people got up early, built an altar there, and offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. The Israelites asked, "Who of all the tribes is of Israel didn't come to the Lord with an assembly?" For a great oath had been taken that anyone who had not come to the Lord of Misa would certainly be put to death. But the Israelites had compassion for their brothers in Benjamin and said, "Today your tribe has been cut off from Israel. What should we do about the wives of for the survivors? We've sworn to the Lord not to give them about on any of our daughters as wives." They asked, "Which city among the tribes of Israel didn't come from the Lord of Mizah?" It turned out that no one from Jabez Gilead had come from the camp of the assembly, for when the roll was called, no men were there from the inhabitants at Jabesh Gilead. The congregation sent 12,000 brave warriors there and commanded them, "Go and alive the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the sword, including women dependents. This is what you should do. Completely destroy every male as well as every woman who had gone to bed with men." They found among the inhabitants of Gabesh 400 young virgins who had not gone to bed with a man, and they brought them in the camp of Shiloh in the land of Canaan. The whole congregation sent a message of peace to the Benjamites who were at the Simeon rock. The Benjamin returned at the time of Israel, gave them the woman gave them the woman they had kept alive from Jobish Gilead, but there were not enough for them. The people had compassion on Benjamin because the Lord had made this gap in the tribes of Israel. The elders of the congregation said, "What should we do about the wives for those who left, since the women of Benjamin have been destroyed?" They said, "There must be heirs for the survivors of Benjamin, so that a tribe of Israel will not be wiped out. But we can't give them our daughters as wives, for the Israelites had sworn, anyone who gives a wife to a Benjamin is cursed." So they also said, "Look, there's an annual festival to the Lord of Shiloh, in the north, who is in the north of Bethel, of the highway that goes up from the Bethel to Bethlehem in the south of Lebona." Then, then they commanded the Benjaminites to go and hide in the vineyards. Watch, and when you see a young woman of Shiloh come out and perform the dances, each of you leave the vineyards and catch the wife for yourselves from the young women of Shiloh and go to the land of Benjamin. When their fathers or brothers come to us and protest, we will tell them, show favor to them, and since we do not get enough wives for each of them in the battle, you don't actually give the woman to them, and so you're not guilty of breaking your oath. The Benjamites did this and took the number of women they needed for the dancers they went back to their own instances, rebuilt their cities, and lived in them. At the time, each of the Israelites returned from there in his own tribe and family. Each returned from there in his own inheritance. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to him. Damn. Ruth. Naomi's family in Moab. During the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah and his wife and his two sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. The names of the two sons were Malon and Chilion. They were Ephraim's from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the fields of Moab and settled there. Naomi's husband Elimelech died, and she was left with her two sons. Her sons took Moabite women and their wives. One was named Orpah, and the second one was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab, after 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her two children and without her husband. Ruth's loyalty to Naomi. She and her daughter-in-law set out to return from the territory of Moab because she had heard that Moab and the Lord had paid attention to his people's needs by providing them food. She left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her two daughters in-laws and traveled along the road leading back to the land of Judah. Naomi said to them, "Each of you go back in your mother's home. May the Lord and show kindness to you as you have shown to the dead to me. May the Lord grant each of you rest in the house of the new husband." She kissed them, and they wept loudly. They said to her, "We insist in returning with you and your people." But Naomi replied, "Return home, my two daughters. Why do you have to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons, or could sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go home. Am I too old to have another husband? Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and have bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? No, my daughters. My life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hands has turned against me and against, and they wept loudly. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, and Ruth clung to her. Naomi said, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Follow your sister-in-law." But Ruth replied, "Don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. Will your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me, and do so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." Then Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her. She stopped talking to her. The two of them traveled until they came to Bethlehem, and they entered Bethlehem. The whole town was excited about their arrival, and the local women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi? Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara." She answered, "For the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went ahead, I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi? Why do you call me Naomi? Since the Lord has opposed me, and the Almighty has afflicted me." So Naomi came back from the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law and Ruth, and the Moabites. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Ruth and Boaz met. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side. She had a prominent man of noble character from the Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz. Ruth and Moabites asked Naomi, "Will you let me go into the fields and gather fallen grain behind someone with whom I find favor?" Naomi asked her, "Go ahead, my daughter Ruth." So Ruth left and entered the field to gather grain behind the harvest. She happened to be in the field belonging to Boaz, who was from the Elimelech's family. Later, the when Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, later when Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, later when Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, he said to the harvesters, "The Lord will be you. The Lord will bless you." What? Later the Boaz arrived from Bethlehem. He said to the harvest, the Lord be with you. The Lord bless you." They replied. Boaz asked his servant, who was in charge of the harvesters, "Whose young woman is this?" The servant answered, "She is the Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the territory of Moab." She asked, "Will you let me gather fallen grain among the birdless behind the harvesters?" She came and has been on her side since early morning, except this was rested a little in the shelter. When Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, don't go and gather grain in another field, and don't leave this one, but stay here close to my female servants. See which field they are harvesting and follow them. Haven't I ordered the young man not to touch you? Do not. When you are thirsty, go and drink from the jars of the young men have filled." She fell face down, bowed on the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor from you, so that you notice me, although I am a foreigner. Boaz answered, everything you have done for your mother-in-law and since your husband's death has been fully reported to me. Hope you left your father and mother and your native land, and how you come to a people and didn't previously know. May the Lord reward you for what you have done, and and may you receive a full reward from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to refuge. Whoa. The Lord, my lord, she said, I have found favor with you, for you have confronted and encouraged your servant. Although I am not like one of your female servants, at mealtime Boaz told her, come over here and have some of the bread and dip it in the vinegar sauce. So she sat beside the harvesters, and he offered her roasted grain. She ate and was satisfied and had some left over. When she got up and to gather grain, Boaz ordered his young men, let her even gather grain among the burdles, and don't humiliate. Pull out some stalks from the bundles for her and leave them for her to gather. Don't rebuke her. So Ruth gathered grain in the field until evening. She beat out what she had gathered, and it was about 26 quarts of barley. She picked up the grain and went into the town where when her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She brought up what she had left over from her meal and gave it to her. Her mother-in-law said to her, where did you gather barley today, and where did you work? May the Lord bless the man who noticed you. Ruth told her mother-in-law, whom she had worked with, and said, the name of the man I worked with today is Boaz. May the Lord bless him, because he has not abandoned his kindness to the living or to the dead. Naomi continued, the man is a close relative. He is one of our family's redeemers. Ruth and Moabites said, he also told me, stay with my young men until they have finished all their harvest. So Naomi said to her daughter-in-law Ruth, my daughter, it is good for you to work with his female servants, so that nothing will happen to you in another field. Ruth stayed close to Boaz's female servants and gathered grain until the barley and the wheat harvest were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Ruth's appeal to Boaz. Boaz, Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi saw to her. What the hell? Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, my daughter shouldn't find rest for you, so that you will be taken care of. Now isn't Boaz our relative? Haven't you been working with his female servants? It seems like he will be threshold floor, washed up on perfumed oil, and wear your best clothes. Go down to the threshold floor, but don't let the man know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, notice the place where he is lying. Go in and uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will explain to you what you should do. Ruth said to her, I will do everything you say. When she went down to the threshold floor and everything her mother-in-law had charged her to do, after Boaz ate, drank, and was good in spirits, he went to lie down. At the end of the pile of barley, and she came secretly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. At midnight, Boaz was startled, turned over, and there was lying in his feet as a woman. So he asked, who are you? I am Ruth, your servant, she replied. Take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer. Then she said, may the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before, because you have not pursued young men, whether rich or poor. Now, don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you Since all the people in my town know that you are a woman of noble character, yes, it is true that I am a family redeemer, but there is a redeemer closer than I am. The, stay, stay here tonight, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, that's good. Let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will now lie until down until morning. So she lay down at his feet until morning, but got up while it was still dark. Then Boaz said, "Don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshold floor." And he told Ruth, "Bring the shawl you're wearing and hold it out." When she held it out, she shoveled 6 measures of barley into her shawl, and she went into the town. She went to her mother-in-law Naomi, who asked her, "What happened, my daughter?" Ruth told her everything the man had done for her. She said, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley because he said, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Naomi said, "My daughter, wait until you find out how things go from how things go, for he won't rest unless he resolves this today." Ruth and Boaz marry. Boaz went to the gate of the town. Boaz Boaz went to the gate of the town. Boaz went to the gate of the town and sat down there. Soon the family redeemer Boaz had spoken about came by. Boaz said, "Come over here and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Then Boaz took the 10 men of the town's elders and said, "Sit here," and they sat down. He said to the redeemer, "Naomi, who was returned from the territory of Moab, is selling the portion of the field that belonged to our father Elimelech. I thought I should inform you, but buy it back in the presence of those seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you want to redeem it, do it. But if you do not want to redeem it, tell me so that I will know, because there isn't anyone other than you to redeem it, and I am next after you. I want to redeem it," he answered. Then Bo said, On the day you buy the field from Naomi, you will require Ruth the Moabitess and the wife of the deceased man to perpetuate the man's name and his property." The Redeemer replied, "I can't redeem it myself, or I will ruin my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption, because I can't redeem it." At the earlier period of Israel, a man removed his sandals and gave it to the other party in order to make it a matter of legal binding, concentrating the right of redemption to the exchange of property. This was the method of legally binding a transaction in Israel. So the Redeemer removed his sandal and said to Boaz, "Buy back the property yourself." So Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are witnessing today that I am buying from Naomi everything that belonged to Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahalo. I have also acquired Ruth. I have also acquired Ruth, the Moabite's Mahlon's widow, as my wife, to perpetuate the deceased man's name on his property, so that his name will not disappear among his relatives or from the gate of his hometown. You are witness today." All the people who were at the city gate, including the elders, said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord take the woman who is entering your house, like Rachel and Leah, who together built the house of Israel. May you be powerful in Ephrathah, and your name well known in Bethlehem. May your house become like the house of Perez, the son of Tamar, born of Judah. Because of the offspring the Lord will give you by this young woman." Both took Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. He slept with her, and the Lord granted conception to her, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you without a family redeemer today. May this make a family redeemer today. May his name become well known in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. Indeed, your daughter of in law who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons has given birth to him. Naomi took her child, placed him on her lap, and became his nanny. The neighbor woman said, "A son has been born to Naomi," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse and the father of David. Huh. David's genealogy from Judah's son. Now these are the family records of Perez. Perez, father of Sison, and son, father of Ram. Ram, father of Aminad. Aminad, father of Nashon. Nashon, father of Salmon. Salmon, father of Boaz. And Boaz, father of Obed. Obed, father of Jesse. And Jesse, father of David. The Book of Samuel. Hannah's vow. There was a man from Ramathian Sophim in a hill country of Ephraim. His name was Elkanah, son of Jerome, and son of Elias, son of Tub, and son of Zebulun, and Ephraim. He had 2 wives, and the first named Hannah, and the second Penny, Penina. Penina had children, but Hannah was childless. This man would go up from his town every year to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of Armies at Shiloh, where Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were the Lord's priests. Hophni and Phinehas. This offered a sacrifice. He always gave a portion to the meat of his wife Phinehas, to his wife Phinina, and to each of her sons' daughters. But he gave a double portion to Hannah, and he loved her, even though the Lord kept it. Even. But it's a double portion to Hannah, for he loved her, even though the Lord had kept her from conceiving. Her rival would taunt her severely just to provoke her, because the Lord had kept Hannah from conceiving. Year after year, when she went up to the Lord's house, her rival taunted her. In this way, Hannah would weep and would not eat. "Hannah, why are you crying?" her husband and would ask. "Why won't you eat? Why are you troubled? Am I not better than you? Am I better to you than 10 sons?" On one occasion, Hannah got up after they ate and drank at Shiloh. The priest Eli was sitting on a chair by the doorstep on the Lord's temple. Deeply hurt, Hannah prayed to the Lord and wept with many tears. Making a vow, she pleaded, "Lord of Armites, if you will take notice of your servant's affliction, remember and not forget me, and give your servant's son. I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and all his hair will never cut." While she continued portraying the Lord's presence, Eli watched her mouth. Hannah was praying silently, and though her lips were moving, her voice could not be heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, "How long are you going to be drunk? Get rid of your wine." "No, my lord," Hannah replied. "I am a woman with a broken heart. I haven't had any wine or beer. I have been pouring out my heart before the Lord. Don't think of me as a wicked woman. I've been portraying from the depth of my anguish the resentment." I responded, "Go in peace, and may the Lord of Israel grant the request you've made to him. May your servant find favor with you," she replied. Then Hannah went on her way. She ate and no longer looked despondent. Samuel's birth and dedication. The next morning, Elkanah and Hannah got up early in the worship before the Lord. Afterwards, they returned home to Ramah. Then Elkanah was intimate with his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. After some time, Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel because she said, "I requested him from the Lord." Then Elkanah and his household went up to make an annual sacrifice in the the offering of the Lord. Hannah did not go and explain to her husband, "After the child is weaned, I'll take him to appear to the Lord's presence and set to stay there permanently." Her husband Elkan responded, "What do you think it's best, to stay here until you've weaned him, or the Lord? May the Lord confirm your word." So Hannah stayed there and nursed her son until she weaned him. When she weaned him, she took him with her to Silo, and there was a 3-year-old bull and a calf of bushel and a flour of clay and a jar of wine. The boy was still young, and she took him to the Lord's house at Shiloh. Then they slaughtered the bull and brought the boy to Eli. "Please, my lord," she said, "as surely as you live, my lord, I am the woman who stood here besides you portraying the Lord. I prayed for this boy, and since the Lord gave me what I asked for him, I now give the boy to the Lord. For as long as he lives, he is given to the Lord." Then he worshipped the Lord there. Hannah's triumphant prayer. Hannah prayed, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is lifted up by the Lord. My mouth boasts over my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides. There is no one besides you, and there is no rock like our God. Do not boast so proudly, or let arrogant words come out of your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and actions are weighed on him. The bows of the warriors are broken, but the feeble are clothed with strength. Those who are filled those who are full hire themselves out for food, but those who are starving hunger no more. The woman who is childless gives birth to 7, but the woman with many sons pines away. The Lord brings death and gives life, and he sends some down to Shiloh, and he raises others up. The Lord brings poverty and gives wealth. He humbles and he exalts. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the trash heap. He sweeps them with noblemen and gives them a throne of honor. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's. He has set the world on them. He guards the steps and his faithful ones, but the wicked perish in darkness. For a person does not prevail by his own strength. For a person does not prevail by his own strength. Those who oppose the Lord will be shattered. He will thunder in the heavens against them, and the Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give power. He will give power to his king. He will lift up the horn of his anointed. Elkanah went home to Ramah, but the boy served the Lord in the presence of the priest Eli. Eli's family judged. Eli's sons were wicked men. They did not respect the Lord, or the priest shares the wicked sacrifices from the people. When anyone of the feared sacrifice, the priest's servants would come out of the 3-pronged meat fork while the meat was boiling. They plunged it into the container, kettle, cauldron, pork cooking pot. The priest would claim for himself whatever the meat fork brought up. This is the way they treated all the Israelites who came out with this. Even though the fat was burned, and the priest's servants would come out and say to one who was sacrificing, "Give the priest some meat and roast, before he won't accept boiled meat from you, only raw." If that person said to him, "The fat must be burned first, then you can take whatever you want for yourself," the servant would reply, "No, I insist that you hand it over right now. If you don't, I'll take it by force." For the servant's sin was very severe in the presence of the Lord, because the men treated the Lord's offering with contempt. Samuel served the Lord's presence. This mere boy was dressed like in the linen ephod. Each of his mothers made him a little robe and took him to him where he went and with her husband, and to offer annual sacrifice. Eli would bless the immigrant and his wife. "May the Lord give you the children by this woman in place of the one she had given to the Lord." Then they would go home. The Lord paid attention to Hannah's needs and conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and daughters of them. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel gave up to the presence of the Lord. Now Eli was very old. He heard about everything his sons were doing in all the Israel, and how they were sleeping with all the women who served in the entrance of the tent meeting. They said, "Why are you doing these things? I have heard about your evil actions from all the peoples. No, my sons, the news I heard the Lord's people spreading is not good. Intercede him. But if a person sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him? But they would not listen to their father, since the Lord. But they would not listen to their father, since the Lord listened to unalive them. By contrast, the the boy Samuel grew in stature and in favor with the Lord and with people. A man of God came to Eli and said to him, "This is what the Lord says. Didn't I reveal myself to your forefathers' family, that they were in Egypt and belonged to Pharaoh's palace? Out of the tribes of Israel, I chose your house to be my priests, the, to offer sacrifices to my altar, to burn incense, and to wear an ephod in my presence. I also gave your forefathers' family and all the Israelites fire offerings. Why then do all of you despise my sacrifices and offerings that I require at the place of worship? Offerings that I require at the place of worship. You have honored your sons more than me by making yourselves fat with the best parts of the offerings of my peoples, Israel. Before this is the declaration of the Lord, the God of Israel. I did say that you, your family, and your forefathers' family would walk before me forever. But now this is the Lord's declaration no longer. For those who honor me, I will honor, but those who despise me will be disgraced. Look, the days are coming from when I cut off your strength and the strength of your forefathers' house, so that none of your family will reach old age. You will be distressed in the place of worship, in spite of all that is good in Israel, and no one in your family will ever again reach old age. Any man from your family I do not cut off from my altar will bring grief and sadness to you. All your descendants will die violently. This will be the sign that you will come to you, honoring your two sons, Hophis and Phinehas. Both of them will die on the same day. When I arise up in the faithful priests of myself, he will do whatever is in my heart and mind. I will establish a lasting dynasty for him, and I will walk before my anointed one for all time. Anyone who is left on your family will come and bow down to him for a piece of silver or a loaf of bread. He will say, "Please to to appoint me to some priestly office so I have a piece of bread to eat." Samuel's call. The boy Samuel served the Lord in Eli's presence. In those days the word of the Lord was rare, and prophetic versions were not widespread. One day Eli, whose eyesight was failing and was lying in his unusual place before the lamp of the God had gone out. Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was located. Then the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, "Here I am." He ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." "I didn't call you," Eli replied. "Go back and lie down." So he went and lay down. Once again the Lord called Samuel. Samuel got up, went to Eli, and said, "Here I am, you called me." "I didn't call you, my son," he replied. "Go back and lie down." So Eli did not yet know the Lord, because the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. Once again, for the third time, the Lord called Samuel. He got up, went to Eli, and said, "Here I am, you called me." Then Eli understood that the Lord was calling the boy. He told Samuel, "Go and lie down. If he calls you, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." So Samuel went and lay down in his place. The Lord came and stood there and called as before, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel responded, "Speak, for your servant is listening." The, the Lord said to Samuel, "I am about to do something in Israel that everyone who hears about it will shudder. On that day I will carry out against Eli everything I said about his family from the beginning to end. I told him that I'm going to judge his family forever because of the iniquity he knows about. His sons are cursing God and he has not stopped them. Therefore, I sworn to Eli's family, the iniquity of Eli's family will never be wiped out by their sacrifice or offering. Samuel lay down until the morning. Then he opened the door of the Lord's house. He was afraid to tell Eli the vision, but Eli called him and said, Samuel, my son. Here I am, answered Samuel. What was the message he gave you? Eli answered, Don't hide it from me. May God punish May God punish you and do so severely if you hide anything from me that he told you. So Samuel told him everything. He did not hide anything from him. Eli responded, He is the Lord. Let him do what he thinks is good. Samuel grew and the Lord was with him. He fulfilled everything Samuel prophesied. All Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was a confirmed prophet for the Lord. The Lord continued to appear to Shiloh, and because he was revealed to him to Samuel by his word, and Samuel's words came all to all Israel. The ark captured by the Philistines. Israel went out to meet the Philistines in battle and camped at Ebenezer, while the Philistines camped at Afsek. The Philistines lined up in battle formation against Israel, and as the battle intensified, Israel was defeated by Philistines, who struck down about 4,000 men in the battlefield. The troops returned to the camp, and the elders of Israel asked, Why did the Lord defeat us today before the Philistines? Let's bring the ark of the Lord of the covenant into Shiloh. Let's bring the ark of the Lord of the covenant from the Shiloh. Then it will go with us and serve us from our enemies. So the people sent men to Shiloh and bring back the ark of the covenant to the Lord of armies, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Eli's sons, two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. When the ark of the covenant of the Lord entered the camp, all the Israelites raised such a loud shout that the ground shook. The Philistines heard the sound of the war cry and asked, What's this loud shout in the Hebrews' camps? Then the Philistines discovered that the ark of the Lord had entered the camp. They panicked. A God has entered their camp. A God has entered their camp. They said, Woe to us! Nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us! Who will rescue us from these magnificent gods? These are the gods that slaughtered the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. Show some courage and be men. Willisting, otherwise you'll serve the Hebrews just as they served you. Now, be men and fight. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and each man fled to his tent. Slaughtered Slaughter was severe. 30,000 of the Israelites' foot soldiers fell. The ark of God was captured, and Eli's sons Hophni and Phinehas died. The death of Ichabod's birth. On the same day, a Benjaminite man ran from the battle and came to Shiloh. His clothes were torn, and there was dirt in his head. Then he arrived. There was Eli sitting in his chair beside the road watching because he was anxious about the ark of the God. When the man entered the city to give a report, the city cried out. Eli heard the outcry and asked, Why this commotion? The man quickly came and reported to Eli. At the time, Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes didn't move because he could not see. The man said to Eli, I'm the one who came from the battle. I fled from here today. What happened, my son Eli? Eli asked. The messenger answered, Israel was fled from the Philistines, and also there was a great slaughter among the people. Your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are both dead, and the ark of God has been captured. When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backwards off the chair of the city gate, and since he was old and heavy, his neck broke and he died. Eli had judged Israel 40 years. Eli's daughter-in-law and the wife of Phinehas were pregnant about to give birth. When he heard the news about the capture of the gods and the gods of death and the fallen land of her husband, and he had collided and gave birth because her labor pains came and gave birth because her labor pains came on her. As she was dying, the woman taking care of her said, "Don't be afraid, and you gave birth to a son, but don't but did not respond to or pay attention. She named the boy Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel," referring to the capture of the ark of the God and the death of her father-in-law and her husband. "The glory has departed from Israel," she said, "because the ark of the God has been captured." The ark in the Philistines' hands. After the Philistines had captured the ark of the God, they took it from Ebenezer and Ashdod, brought it into the temple of Dagon, and placed it next to the statue. Then the people of Ashdod got up early in the next morning. There was Dagon fallen with his face in the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and returned him to his place. But they got up early the next morning. There was Dagon fallen with his face in the ground before the ark of the Lord. And this time Dagon's head and both of his hands were broken off and lying on the threshold. Only Dagon's torso remained. This is why, still today, the priest of Dagon and everyone who enters the temple of Dagon in Ashdod did not steep up Dagon's threshold. The Lord's hand was heavy in the people of Ashdod. He terrified the people of Ashdod and did its territory, afflicting with them tumors. When the people of Ashdod saw what was happening there, saw what was happening. Saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of Israel's God must not stay here with us. The ark of Israel's God must not stay here with us, because his hand is strongly against us and our God Dagon." So he called all the Philistines' rulers together and asked, "What should we do with the ark of Israel's God?" "The ark of Israel's God should be moved to Gath," they replied. So they moved the ark of Israel's God. After they had moved it, in the Lord's hand was against the city of Gath, caused them great panic, and afflicted the people of the city with the youngest and the oldest in the outbreak of the tumors. The people of Gath then sent the ark of the God of Ekron, but when they got there, the Ekronites cried out. Then they moved the ark of Israel's gods to us to unalive and us and our people. The Ekronites called all the Philistines' rulers together. They said, "The ark of Israel's got away. Let it return to its place. It is so it won't unalive us and our people." For the fear of death prevailed. The city, the city God's hands was oppressed them. God's hands was oppressing them. Those who did not die were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city went out of heaven. The return of the Lord had been Philistines' territory for 7 months. The Philistines summoned the priests and the diviners and pleaded, "What should we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how we can send it back to its place." They replied, "If you send the ark of Israel's God away, do not send it without an offering back back to a guilt offering to him, and you will be healed. Then the reason his hands wasn't been removed from you will be revealed." They asked, "What guilt offering should we send back to him?" And they answered, "5 gold tumors and 5 gold mice, corresponding to the number of Philistine rulers, since there was no plague for both you and your rulers. Make images and your tumors and your mice that are storing that land. Give glory to Israel's God, and perhaps he will stop oppressing you, your gods, in your land. Why harden your hearts at the Egyptians and Pharaoh's hardened theirs? When he afflicted them, they don't send Israel's away, and Israel left. Now then, prepare 1 new cart and 2 milk cows, and have never been yoked. Hitch the cows of the cart, but Take their calves away and pen them up. Take the ark of the Lord, place it in the cart, and put it in the gold objects that you are sending him as a guilt offering in the box besides the ark. Send it off and let it this way. Then watch if it goes up the road to its homeland towards Beth Shem. It is the Lord who has made this terrible trouble for us. However, if it doesn't, we will know that it was not his hand that punished us. It was just something that happened to us by chance. The men did this. They took 2 milk cows, hitched them in the cart, and confined them in the calves in the pen. Then they put up the ark of the Lord in the ark along the box containing the gold mice and the images of their tumors. The cows went straight into the road in Bethlehem, and they stayed on the highway, lowing as they went. They never stayed to the right or the left. The Philistine rulers were walking behind them in the territory of Beth Bishan. The people of Bethlehem were harvesting wheat in the valley, and they looked up and saw the ark. They were overjoyed and see it. The cart came in the field of Joshua of Bethlehem and stopped there near a large rock. The people in the city chopped up the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites removed the ark, the Lord, along with the box containing the gold objects, and placed them in the large rock. That day, the people of Bethlehem uh, con- the day the people of Beth Shem offered the burnt offerings and made sacrifices to the Lord, and the 5 Philistine rulers observed this, they returned the Ekton the same day as a guilt offering to the Lord Philistines, and sent back to the gold tumor for each. Sent back 1 gold tumor for each city: Gaza, Ashdod, Gath, and Ekron. The number of gold mice also corresponded to the number of Philistine cities in the 5 rulers, the fortified cities that were outlying villages, the large rock of which the ark of the Lord was placing in its field of Joshua of Bethlehem today. They struck down the people of Beth Shemesh because they looked inside the ark of the Lord. He struck down 70 persons. The people mourned because the city struck them with a great slaughter. The people of Beth Shechem asked, "Who is able to stand in the presence of the Lord with this holy God? Whom should ask the ark go from here?" They sent messages to the residents of Kingdom saying, "The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and get it." So the people of Kiriath came from the ark of the Lord and took it to Abraham's house in the hill. They considered this son Elizar and take care of it. Victory at Mizpah. Time went by until 20 years have passed since the ark had been taken by Kiriath. The whole house of Israel longed for the Lord. Samuel told them, "If you are returning to the Lord in your heart, get rid of the foreign gods of the Asherites that are among you, and dedicate yourself to the Lord and worship only Him. Then He will rescue you from the Philistines." So the Israelites removed the Baals and the Asherites and only worshipped the Lord. Samuel said, "Gather all the Israel at Mizpah, and I will pray that the Lord on your behalf." Then when they gathered at Mizpah, they drew water and poured it on to the Lord's presence. They fasted that day, and when they confessed they have sinned against the Lord, and Samuel judged the Israelites at Mizpah. When the Philistines heard that the Israelites elites had gathered at Mizpah, their rulers marched up towards Israel. When the Israelites heard that about they were afraid because of the Philistines. The Israelites said to Samuel, "Don't stop crying about the Lord our God for us. We will save us from the They will save us from the Philistines." Samuel took a young lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. He cried out to the Lord on behalf of Israel, and the Lord answered him. Samuel was offering the burnt offering as the Philistines approached to fight against Israel. The Lord thundered loudly against the Philistines, and that day threw them into such confusion. They were defeated by Israel. Then the men of Israel charged in the Mizpah and pursued the Philistines, striking them down all the way to a place below Bethlehem. Afterwards, Bethlehem took a stone and set it upright between the Mizpah and Shen. He named it Ezra, explaining, "The Lord has helped us to this point." So the Philistines were subdued, and it did not invade Israel's territory again. The Lord's hand was against the Philistines and all of Samuel's life. The cities from Ekton and the Gath, which they had taken from Israel, were restored. Israel even rescued their surrounding territories from the Philistines' control. There was also peace between Israel and the Amalekites. Samuel judged Israel throughout his life. Every year he should go into the circuit of Bethlehem, Gilgal, and Mizpah, and would judge Israel at all these locations. Then he would return to Ramah because his home was there, and he judged Israel there, and he built an altar to the Lord there. Israel's demand. Israel's demand for a king. Wow, they're demanding a king. When Israel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges over Israel. His firstborn son was named Joel, and this was his second. And the judges were beaten. However, his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned towards this honest prophet, took bribes, and perverted justice. All the elders of Israel gathered together and went to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, "Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Therefore, appoint a king to judge us at the same time as the other nations have." When they said, "Give us a king to judge us," Samuel considered their demand wrong. So he prayed to the Lord, "Lord," but the God told him, "Listen to the people. Listen to the people and did everything they said to you. They have not rejected you. They have rejected me as their king. They are doing the same thing for you as they have done to me. Since the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, I abandoned me and worshipped other gods. Listen to them. Solely listen, warn them, and tell them about the customary rights of the king who will reign over them." Samuel told the Lord's words to the people who were asking him for a king. They said, "These are the rights for the king who will reign over you. You will take your sons and put them in his chariots, for his horses, or running in front of his chariots. He can appoint them for his house as a commanders of thousands, of commanders of fifties, to pillow the ground and reap his harvest. So, or to make his weapons of war and the equipment of his chariots. He can take your daughters to become perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He can take your best fields, vineyards, and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He can take a tenth of your grain and your vineyards and give them to his officials and servants. He can take your male servants and your female servants and your best young men and your donkeys and use them for good, use them for his work. He can take a tenth of your flock and you yourselves can become his servants. When the day comes, you will cry out because of the king you have chosen for yourself, but the Lord won't answer you on that day." The people refused to listen to Samuel. "No," they said, "you must have a king over us. They will be stricken to the other nations. Our king will judge us. Go out before us and fight our battles." Samuel listened to all the people's words and then repeated them to the Lord. "Listen to them," the Lord said to Samuel. "Appoint a king for them." Samuel told the men of Israel, "Each of you, go back to your city." Saul anointed king. There was a prominent man of Benjamin named Kish, son of Abib, son of Zerah, son of Bechoin, son of Achim, son of Benjaminite. He had a son named Saul, an impressive young man. There was no one more impressive among the Israelites than he. He stood a head of taller than anyone else. One day, the donkeys of Saul's father, Kish, wandered off. King Kish said to his son Saul, "Take one of his servants with you and go look for the donkeys." Saul and his servants went through the hill of the Ephraim and then throughout the region of Kadesh, but they don't find them. They went to the region of Salem, nothing. But they went through the Benjamin region, but still didn't find them. Then they came to the land of Zuf, Saul said to them, to the servants who was with them, "Come on, let's go back, or my father will stop worrying about the donkeys and start worrying about us." "Look," the servants said, "there's a man of God of this city who is highly respected, and everything he says is sure to come true. Let's go there now. Maybe he'll tell us which way we should go." "Suppose we do go," Saul said to his servants, "that what do we take the man? The food from our pack is gone, and there's no gift to take to the man of God. What should we have? What do we have?" The servant answered Saul, "Here I have a little silver. I'll give it to the man of God, and he will tell us which way we should go." Formerly in Israel, the man who was going to inquire of God would say, "Come on, let's go to a seer for the prophet of today's, formerly called the seer." "Good," Saul replied to his servant. "Come on, let's go." So they so they went to the city where the man of God was. As they climbed the hill of the city, they found some young women coming out of the draw water and asked, "Is the seer here?" The woman answered, "Yes, he is ahead of you. Hurry, he has just entered the city because there is a sacrifice for the people at a high place today. As soon as you enter the city, you will find him before he goes to the high place to eat. The people won't eat until he comes before he must bless the sacrifice. After that, the guests can eat. Go up immediately. You can find him now." So they went up towards the city. Saul and his servants were entering the city, and then they saw Samuel coming towards them on his way to the high place. Now, the day before Saul's arrival, the Lord had informed Samuel, "At this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him ruler over my people of Israel. He will save them from the Philistines, because I have seen the affliction of my people, for their cry has come to me." Then Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord told him, here is the when then first, because I have affliction on my people, and for the their cry has come to me." Samuel, when Samuel saw Saul, the Lord told him, "Here is the man I told you about. He will govern my people." Saul approached Samuel in the city gate and asked, "Why would you please tell me where the seer's house is?" "I am the seer," Samuel answered. "Go up ahead of me in the high place and eat with me today. I will send you off in the morning. I'll tell you everything that is in your heart. As for the donkeys that wandered away from the 3 days ago, don't worry about them, because they've been found. And who does all Israel desire but you and all your father's family?" Saul responded, "I'm not a Benjamin from the smallest of Israel's tribe, and isn't my clan the least important of all the clans of the Benjamin tribe? So why do you have said something like this to me?" Samuel took Saul and his servants, brought them to the banquet hall, and they gave them a place to eat at the head of the 30th. At the head of the 30 or so men who have been invited. Then Samuel said to the cook, "Get to the proportion of the meat that I give to you, to y- that I give you, and told you to set aside." The cook picked up the thigh that was attached to it and set it before Saul. Then Samuel said, "Notice that the reserved piece is set before you. Eat it, because it was saved for you for this solemn event. At the time I said, I invite the people." So Saul ate with Samuel that day. Afterwards they went down from the high place in the city, and Samuel spoke with Saul on the roof. They got up early, and just before dawn Samuel called Saul on the roof, "Get up, and I'll send you on your way." Saul got up, and both he and Samuel went outside. As they were going down the edge of the city, Samuel said to Saul, "Tell the servant to go on ahead of you, but you stay for a while, and I'll reveal the word of God to you." So the servant went. Samuel took the flask of oil, poured it on out Saul's head, and what we did that some weird shit. And hasn't the Lord anointed you the ruler over the inheritance? Today, doing some sus shit. Then the Lord ruler over the inheritance. Then you will leave me. You'll find 2 men at Rachel's cave at Selah, in the territory of Benjamin. They will go say to you, "The donkeys you were looking for have been found." And your father has stopped being concerned about the donkeys. It is worried about you, asking, "What should I do about my son?" You will proceed from there until you come to the oak of Tabor. 3 men going up to God at Bethel will meet you there, one bringing 3 goats, and one bringing 3 loaves of bread, and one bringing a clay jar of wine. They will ask how you are, and give you 2 loaves of bread. Which of you will accept them? After that, you will come to Gibeah, God, which where there are Philistines garrison. When you arrive at the city, you will meet a group of prophets coming down from the high place prophesying. They will proceed by harps, tambourines, flutes, and lights. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully on you. You will prophesy them, and you will be transformed. Then these signs have happened to you. Do whatever your circumstances require, because God is with you. Afterwards, go ahead and of me of Gilgad. I will come to you to offer burnt offerings and to sacrifice fellowship offerings. Wait until 7 days until I come to you and show you what to do. Then Saul returned be around to leave Samuel. God changed his heart, and all the signs came about that day. Then, when Samuel and his servant arrived at Gibeah, the group of prophets met him, and the Spirit of God came powerfully on him, and he prophesied along with them. Everyone who knew him previously and saw him prophesy. The prophets asked each other, "What has happened to the son of Kish?" And the Saul also. Is Saul also among the prophets? Then a man who was from there asked, "And who is their father?" And as a result, Saul was among the prophets, become a popular saying. Then Saul finished prophesying and went to the high place. Saul's uncle asked him and his servant, "Where did you go?" "To look for the donkeys," Saul answered. Then he saw they weren't there. He went to Samuel. "Tell me, Samuel's uncle, what did Samuel say to you?" Saul told him. "He assured us the donkeys has been found." However, Saul did not tell him that Samuel had said about the matter of kinship. Saul received as king. Samuel summoned the people of the Lord and said to the Israelites, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, said. I brought Israel out of Egypt, and I resurrect you from the power of Egyptians and all the kingdoms that were oppressing you. But today you are rejected. You have rejected your God who serves you from all your troubles and afflictions. You said to him, 'You must set a king over us.' Now therefore present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and clans." Samuel and the tribes of Israel came forward, and the tribe of Benjamin was elected. And they had tribes of Benjamin come towards by his clans of the Midraite clan that was selected. Finally, Saul, son of Kish, was selected, but they reached for him, could not find him. They again inquired to the Lord, "Was the man Has the man come here yet?" The Lord replied, "There he is, hidden among the supplies." They ran and got him from there. When he stood among the people, he stood a head taller than anyone else. Samuel said to all the people, "Did you see the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among the entire population." All the people shouted, "Long live the king!" Samuel proclaimed that all the lords of rights of kingship, wrote them on a scroll, which placed them on the presence of the Lord. Then Samuel sent all the people home. Saul went also went to his home in Gibesh, and brave men whose heart God has touched went with him. But some wicked men said, "How can this guy save us?" They despised him and did not bring him a gift, but Saul said nothing. Saul's deliverance of Gabesh, Gilgal, Nasha, and Ammonite came up and laid siege at Jabez, and all the men of Jabez said to him, Make the treaty Make a treaty with us, and I will serve you." Nahash and Ammonites. "Make a treaty with us, and we will serve you." Nahash and Ammonites replied, "We'll make him." Nahash and Ammonites replied, "I'll make one of you on his condition. Then I gouge out everyone's right eye and humiliate all of Israel. Don't do anything for us for 7 days. The elders of Judah said to him, and let us send messengers throughout the territory of Israel. If no one saves us, we will surrender to you. Then the messengers came to Gibeah, Saul's hometown, and told us terms of the people will wept aloud. Just then Saul was coming in from the field behind the oxen. What's the matter with all the people? Why are they weeping? Saul inquired, and they repeated to him in the words of the man from Jabesh. Then Saul heard these words. The Spirit of God suddenly came powerfully on him, and his anger burned furiously. He took a team of oxen, cut them in pieces, and sent them throughout the territory of Israel by messengers who said, "This is what will be done in the ox of anyone who does march Saul behind Saul and Samuel." As a result, the terror of the Lord fell on the people, and they went out united. Saul counted them at Bezek. They there were there were there were 300,000 men from Judah. He told the messengers who had come here, "Tell this to the men of Jabelah, deliverance will be yours tomorrow by the time the sun is hot." So the messengers told the men of Jabelah, and they rejoiced. Then the men of Jabesh said to Nahshon, "Tomorrow we will come out, and you can do whatever you want to us." The next day Saul organized the troops into 3 divisions. During the morning watch, they invaded the Ammonite camp and slaughtered them until the heat of the day. There were survivors, but they were so scattered that no two of them were left together. Saul's confirmation as king. Afterwards, the people said to Samuel, who said to Saul, "Should not reign over us. Give us those men who so we can unalive them." Saul ordered, "No one will be executed on this day. The Lord has provided deliverance on Israel." Then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let's go to Gilgash, so we can renew the kingship there." So all the people went to Gilgad, and there, in the Lord's presence, they made Saul king, and they sacrificed fellowship offerings in the Lord's presence. And Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly. Samuel's final public speech. Then Samuel said to all of Israel, "I have carefully listened to everything you have said to me and placed the king over you. Now you can see that the king is leading you. As for me, I am an old gray, and my sins are here with me, with you. I have led you my youth until here I am, the anointed one. Now you can see that the king is leading you. As for me, I'm old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I have led you from my youth until now. Here I am. Bring charges against me before the Lord has anointed me." And the ox is the ox have I taken, whom I have wronged or mistreated. From whom have I accepted a bribe or overtook something? I will return it to you. You have wronged us and have mistreated us, and you haven't taken anything from anyone. They responded. The Lord The Lord is a witness against you, and your anointed is a witness against you today, that you haven't found anything in my hand. He is a witness, they said. Samuel said to the people, "The Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron, and who brought your ancestors up from the land of Egypt, is a witness. Now present yourselves, so I may confirm you before the Lord about all the righteous acts that he has done for you and your ancestors. When Jacob went to Egypt, his ancestors cried out to the Lord, and he sent them Moses and Aaron, who led your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them in the places. But they forget that the Lord their God, that the Lord their God, so he handed them over to Sisera, commander of the army, to Hazor, to the Philistines, and to the king of Moab. These enemies fought against them. So they cried out, and the Lord said, "We have sinned, for we abandoned the Lord and have worshipped They cried out to the Lord, "We have sinned and have abandoned the Lord and have worshipped the Baals and Athrites. Now rescue us from the power of our enemies, and we will serve you." So the Lord sent Jerubbaal, Balak, and Samuel. He rescued you from the power of the enemies around you, and you lived securely. But when you saw that Nash, king of Ammonites, was coming against you, you said to me, "Now we must have a king reign over us, even though the Lord your God is your king. Now here is the king you've chosen, the one you've requested. So look, this is the king the Lord has placed over you." If you fear the Lord, worship and obey him, and if you don't rebel against the Lord's commands, then both you and the king who reign over you will follow the Lord your God. However, if you disobey the Lord and rebel against the command, the Lord's hands will be against you as it was against your ancestors. Now, therefore, present yourselves and see this great thing that the Lord will do before your eyes. Isn't the wheat harvest today? I will call to the Lord that he will send thunder and rain so that you will recognize what an immense evil you have committed in the Lord's sight by requesting a king for yourselves. Samuel called the Lord, and on that day the Lord sent thunder and rain. As a result, all the and the people greatly feared the Lord and Samuel. Pray for the Lord your God for your servants so that you won't die, for we have added all of our sins and evil for requesting a king for ourselves. Samuel replied, "As for me, I vow that I will not sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you. I will teach you the good and the right way. Above all, fear the Lord and worship him faithfully, with all your heart. Consider the great things. Consider the great things. For the Lord your worship him faithfully with all your heart. Consider the great thing he has done for you. However, if you continue to do what is evil, both you and your king will be swept away." Saul's failure. Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 42 years over Israel. He chose 3 householdsmen from Israel for himself. 2,000 here with Saul at Misha and Bethel, his country, and 1,000 here were on Jordan and Gilgamesh. The hill country, and 1,000 were on Johan, and half were on Johan's and the gibbets of Benjamin. He sent the rest of the troops away, each of his own tent. Thus, he sent the rest of the troops away, each of his own tent. Then Judah attacked the Palestine garrison that was at Geba, and the Philistines heard about it. So Paul blew the ram's horns throughout the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." And all Israel heard the news. Saul was attacked. Saul had. Saul has attacked the Philistines' garrison, and the Israel is now repulsive to the Philistines. Then the troops were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. The Philistines were also gathered to fight against Israel. 3,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and troops as numerous as the sand of the seashore. They went up and camped at Shemeth, east of Bethem. The men of Israel saw that The men of Israel saw that they were in trouble because the troops were in a different situation, cold situation. They did in caves in thickest among rocks, and in holes and chasms. Some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan at the land of Gad. And Gad. The men of Israel saw that they were in trouble because the troops were in a different situation. They hid in caves and thickness and among rocks and in holes and cisterns. Some Hebrews then crossed the Jordan at the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul, however, was still. Saul, however, was still at Gilgad, and his troops were gripped with fear. He waited 7 days for the appointed time. Saul, however, was still at Gilgad, and his troops were gripped with fear. Saul, however, was still in Gilgad, and all his troops were gripped with fear. He waited 7 days for the appointed time that Samuel had set, but Samuel didn't come to Gilgad, and the troops were deserting him. So Saul said, "Bring me the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings." Then he offered the burnt offerings. Just as he finished offerings the burnt offerings, Samuel arrived. So Saul went out to greet him, and Samuel asked, "What have you done?" Saul asked, "When I saw that the troops dis- were deserting, and you didn't come within the appointed days, and the Philistines were gathering at Michmas, I thought the Philistines were now descended on me at Gilgal, and I haven't sought the Lord's favor. So I forced myself to offer the burnt offerings. Samuel said to Saul, "You have been foolish. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you." It was at this time that the Lord would have permanently established your reign over Israel. But now your reign will not endure. The Lord has found a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him ruler over his people, because you have not done what the Lord commanded. Then Samuel went from Gilgad and Gibeah in Benjamin. Saul registered the troops who were with him, about 600 men.